Hey everyone, I'm the storyteller, and I'm here to help you relax tonight. I know a lot of you use this video to fall asleep, so before we start, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you from and what time is it there? Now get comfortable, take a deep breath, and just relax. The night visitor. I work nights at a hotel. Not a fancy one. Just a regular place off the highway where truckers stop to sleep. Most nights are quiet. I sit at the front desk, watch TV on my phone, and check people in. That's it. But last month, something weird started happening. It was a Tuesday night, around 2 a.m. I was watching videos when I heard it. A voice, coming from the security monitor. Our cameras record sound, but usually, you just hear cars passing by or maybe someone's conversation as they walk to their room. This was different. The voice was singing. Not regular singing. It was low and slow. Like someone humming a lullaby, but wrong. The tune didn't make sense. It went up when it should go down. It stopped in weird places. I looked at all the monitors. Nobody was there. The parking lot was empty except for 3 cars. The hallways were dark. The pool area was closed. But the singing continued. I turned up the volume. The voice was definitely male. And he was singing words now, but I couldn't understand them. They weren't English. They weren't Spanish either, and I know enough Spanish to recognize it. Then it stopped. I waited. Nothing. I figured maybe it was coming from one of the rooms. Sometimes sound travels weird in this place. So I forgot about it and went back to my videos. The next night it happened again. Same time. 2 a.m. Same voice. Same strange song. This time I paid attention to which camera the sound was coming from. It was the parking lot camera. The one that faces the dumpsters in the back. I switched to that camera and turned on the night vision. Nothing there. Just the dumpsters and the fence behind them. But the singing was definitely coming from that area. I thought about going out to check. Then I remembered I'm alone here until 6 a.m. My manager always says, don't be a hero. If something's weird, call the cops. But what would I say? There's someone singing by the dumpsters? They'd laugh at me. So I just turned the volume down and ignored it. This went on for a week. Every night at 2 a.m. Same voice. Same song. I started recording it on my phone. I wanted proof I wasn't going crazy. On the 8th night, something changed. The singing started as usual, but this time there were words I could understand. Mixed in with the strange language were English words. Steven at the desk. That's me. I'm Steven. Steven watches screens. My hands were shaking. I stared at the monitor, trying to see something, anything. Steven all alone. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but then I stopped. What if this was just some drunk guy messing with me? What if he knew my name from my name tag? Guests see it all the time. The singing continued. More English words now. Steven leaves at 6. Steven drives a Honda. Steven lives on Maple Street. I did drive a Honda. But how did he know that? My car was in the employee section around the side of the building. You couldn't see it from the dumpsters. And Maple Street. I did live on Maple Street. In a small apartment about 10 minutes away. Now I was really scared. I called my manager at home. It went to voicemail. I called the police non-emergency line. 911, what's your emergency? It's not really an emergency. I work at the Highway Inn on Route 50. Someone's been hanging around the property singing weird songs. Tonight he's saying stuff about me. Personal stuff. Is this person threatening you? Not exactly. He's just singing about me. He knows where I live. Can you see this person? No, I can just hear him on the security cameras. There was a pause. We'll send someone to check it out. I waited. The singing had stopped. 20 minutes later, a cop car pulled up. Officer Martinez. I knew him. He came by sometimes for coffee. Hey Steven, you called about someone singing? I explained everything. Showed him the recordings on my phone. He listened, frowning. That is weird, he said. Let me check around back. I watched on the monitors as he walked to the dumpster area. His flashlight swept back and forth. He looked behind the dumpsters, checked the fence. He even looked inside the dumpsters. Nothing. He came back shaking his head. Nobody there. You sure the sound is coming from outside? Maybe it's picking up someone's TV from a room? It's been happening every night at exactly 2 a.m. Tell you what, I'll mention it to the day shift. We'll have them swing by around that time for the next few nights. After he left, I felt a little better, but not much. The next night I was ready. I had my phone recording. I had the monitor turned up. I had Officer Martinez's direct number saved. 2 a.m. came. Nothing. 2:15. Still nothing. The singing had stopped. Just like that. After 9 nights, it was over. I should have been relieved. But I wasn't. It felt wrong. Like when a movie ends too suddenly. I worked the rest of the week. No singing. I started to relax. Maybe whoever it was got spooked by the cop. Maybe they moved on to bother someone else. Then Sunday came. My night off. I was at home watching TV in bed. It was almost 2 a.m. I was getting sleepy. That's when I heard it. The singing. Coming from outside my apartment window. Same voice. Same weird song. But now there were new words mixed in. Steven's home tonight. Steven's all alone. Steven sleeps at 3. Steven locks his door. I did lock my door. I always lock my door. But I checked anyway. Still locked. I peeked through the blinds. The street was empty. Just parked cars and street lights. But the singing continued. Closer now. Like it was right under my window. I lived on the 2nd floor. Someone would have to be standing on the grass below, looking up. I called 911. This time I didn't care if I sounded crazy. Someone's outside my apartment. They've been stalking me for weeks. They know things about me. Please send someone. What's your address? I gave it to them. The singing got louder. More English words now. Steven's scared tonight. Steven's heart beats fast. Steven should have listened. Steven should have come. Come where? I never figured that out. The cops arrived in 5 minutes. By then the singing had stopped. They searched everywhere. The bushes, the parking lot, even the roof. Nothing. They took a report. Said they'd increase patrols in the area. One of them, an older guy, pulled me aside. You might want to stay with a friend for a few nights, he said. Just to be safe. So I did. I packed a bag and went to my cousin's house across town. Told my manager I needed a few days off. He wasn't happy, but I didn't care. I stayed away for a week. When I finally went back to my apartment, everything seemed normal. No singing. No weird feelings. I started to think maybe it was over. I went back to work. Different shift now. Days. My manager thought it would be better. I agreed. It's been a month since all this happened. I still have the recordings on my phone. Sometimes I listen to them, trying to figure out what the words mean. I've played them for friends. Nobody recognizes the language. Last week, I was cleaning out my car and found something under the passenger seat. A cassette tape. Old school. The kind nobody uses anymore. I don't own any cassette tapes. Haven't for years. Written on it in black marker was Steven's Song Volume 1. I still have it. Haven't played it. Don't own a cassette player anyway. But sometimes I look at it and wonder, what would have happened if I'd gone out to the dumpsters that first night? What did he mean by Steven should have come? And why does it say Volume 1? I try not to think about it. But sometimes late at night, I swear I can hear that singing. Faint. Far away. Like it's coming from somewhere I can't quite place. I started looking for a new job. One that doesn't involve nights. One that doesn't involve being alone. Because I know deep down that he's still out there. Still singing. Still waiting. And one day he'll finish his song. I make extra money house sitting. It's easy work. Water the plants, feed the pets, make sure nobody breaks in. Most of the time, I just watch Netflix and get paid for it. Last summer, I got a job through a friend of a friend. They needed someone to watch their house for 2 weeks while they went to Europe. Nice place too. Big colonial in the suburbs. Pool in the back. 3-car garage. The owner, Mrs. Chen, met me the day before they left. She was maybe 60, very put together. Showed me around, explained everything twice. The alarm code is 4825, she said. Very important, said it every night. She showed me how to feed the fish. Just a pinch in the morning, a pinch at night. They had this huge aquarium in the living room. Must have been 200 gallons. Beautiful fish, all different colors. My husband loves these fish, she said. Please be careful with them. Then she showed me the guest room where I'd sleep. Down the hall from the master bedroom. You can use any room except the master bedroom, she said. My husband is very particular about his space. I thought that was weird since they'd be gone, but rich people have their quirks. I just nodded and smiled. She gave me a binder. Everything was in there. Emergency numbers, Wi-Fi password, how to work the complicated coffee maker. She'd thought of everything. Oh, one more thing, she said as they were leaving. The pool guy comes on Wednesdays. The lawn service comes on Fridays. And my husband's nurse stops by every day at 3 p.m. Nurse? I asked. For his checkup, she said. Don't worry about it. She has her own key. She'll be in and out. I thought that was odd. Why would a nurse come to check on someone who wasn't there? But again, I didn't ask. Not my business. The first few days were great. I lounged by the pool, watched movies on their huge TV, ate takeout in their fancy kitchen. The fish were easy to take care of. The house was quiet and cool. On the third day, the nurse showed up, right at 3 p.m. I heard the front door open and called out, "Hello?" "Just the nurse," a woman's voice called back. "Don't mind me." I heard footsteps going upstairs. I went back to my show. About 20 minutes later, I heard her coming back down. "All done," she called out. The front door closed. I didn't see her, but that was fine. I figured she was just checking on something. Maybe watering plants upstairs or something. This went on every day. 3 p.m., door opens, just the nurse. Footsteps upstairs, 20 minutes later she leaves. On the 6th day I got curious. When I heard her come in, I quietly went to the bottom of the stairs. I could hear her up there moving around. It sounded like she was in the master bedroom. I heard drawers opening, water running. Then I heard her talking. Soft, like she was speaking to someone. "Time for your medicine, Mr. Chin." "That's it. Good job." But the Chins were in Europe. I dropped them off at the airport myself. I went back to the living room, confused. Maybe she was on the phone? But it didn't sound like a phone conversation. It sounded like she was talking to someone in the room. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The master bedroom was right above the guest room where I slept. I lay there listening. The house was so quiet I could hear the fish tank bubbling downstairs. Then I heard it. A cough. From upstairs. I sat up. Listened harder. Nothing. Must have been my imagination. The next day, when the nurse came, I decided to be more direct. When she called out her usual, "Just the nurse," I responded, "Hi, I'm the house sitter. Can I get you anything?" Silence. Then, "No thank you, dear. Just doing my rounds." Her voice sounded strange. Nervous, maybe. I heard her go upstairs as usual. This time I followed. Quietly. I stood at the top of the stairs, listening. The master bedroom door was closed. I could hear her in there moving around and talking again. Now, don't be difficult. You need to eat something," Mrs. Chin insisted. Then I heard another voice. "Mel, wait, no more. Please." My heart was pounding. Someone was in there. Had been in there the whole time. I backed away, went downstairs, and called the number Mrs. Chen had given me. It went straight to voicemail. International plans, probably. I texted instead, "Mrs. Chen, quick question about the nurse. Please call when you can." No response. That night I barely slept. Every little sound made me jump. I kept thinking about that voice. No more. Please. The next morning I decided to look at the binder again. Maybe there was something I'd missed. I flipped through it. Alarm code, plant watering schedule, pool maintenance. Then I found it, tucked in the back. A medical form. Patient, Robert Chin. Diagnosis, advanced dementia. Care plan, 24-hour supervision required. Medications, see attached list. Mr. Chin wasn't in Europe. He was upstairs. I felt sick. Why would she lie to me? Why would she leave me here with her sick husband and not tell me? When the nurse came that day, I was waiting by the door. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 30. Scrubs and sneakers. She looked surprised to see me. "Hi," I said. "I'm Sarah, the house sitter." "I know who you are," she said. She tried to move past me. "Wait," I said. "I know Mr. Chin is upstairs." She stopped, looked at me. "Mrs. Chin said you wouldn't ask questions." "Well, I'm asking now. What's going on?" She sighed. "Look, I just do my job. He needs his meds, needs to be cleaned and fed. That's what I do. What Mrs. Chin tells you is her business. Is he dangerous?" She laughed. Not a happy laugh. "He doesn't even know where he is most days. Thinks it's 1982. Thinks Reagan is president. So why keep it a secret?" She shrugged. "Rich people are weird. Maybe she's embarrassed. Maybe she doesn't want people to know. Not my place to judge." She pushed past me and went upstairs. I let her go. But I couldn't let it go. That night, after I was sure the nurse was long gone, I went upstairs. Stood outside the master bedroom. The door was locked, but I could hear a TV playing inside. Game show sounded like, "Mr. Chin?" I called out softly. The TV volume lowered. "Who's there?" The voice was clearer than before. Confused but not weak. "I'm Sarah. I'm watching the house." "Sarah? I don't know any Sarah. Where's Linda?" Linda must be Mrs. Chen's first name. "She's on a trip," I said through the door. "She'll be back soon." "A trip?" She didn't tell me about any trip. "I need to get to work." Big meeting today. Have you seen my briefcase? My heart broke a little. I'm sure it's around somewhere, Mr. Chin. Why don't you rest? Can't rest. Too much to do. The Johnson report is due. Linda. Linda, where's my blue tie? I heard him moving around in there. Shuffling. Things being moved. Mr. Chin, it's nighttime. No work today. Try to sleep. Nighttime? But the sun is... Wait, what year is it? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Hello? Are you still there? Can you help me find Linda? I can't find Linda. I went back downstairs. Sent another text to Mrs. Chin. I know about Mr. Chin. We need to talk. This time, she responded within minutes. Please don't disturb him. The nurse handles everything. You were not supposed to know. Extra $500 if you say nothing. I stared at the text. $500 to pretend I didn't know there was a sick old man locked upstairs. I thought about calling someone. Adult Protective Services, maybe. But what would I say? He was being cared for. The nurse came every day. He had food, medicine, a TV. Was it neglect if all his needs were being met? I decided to wait. Watch. See what happened. The next few days were torture. I could hear him up there sometimes, walking around, calling for Linda. Once, in the middle of the night, I heard him crying. The nurse kept coming. 3 p.m. every day. She started avoiding eye contact with me. Got in and out faster. On the 10th day, something changed. I was in the kitchen when I heard a crash from upstairs. Then another. Glass breaking. I ran up the stairs. The master bedroom door was still locked, but I could hear Mr. Chen inside yelling. Where am I? This isn't my house. Linda, help. Someone help. More crashing. It sounded like he was throwing things. I called the nurse's number from the binder. Voicemail. Called Mrs. Chen. Straight to voicemail. The crashing stopped. Then I heard him fall. A heavy thud. Mr. Chin? I pounded on the door. Are you okay? Moaning. He was hurt. I called 911. My employer's husband is locked in a room and I think he's hurt. He has dementia. I can hear him moaning. They came fast. Broke down the door. Mr. Chin was on the floor, cut from broken glass. Not badly, but enough to need attention. The paramedics were gentle with him. He kept asking for Linda, kept saying he was late for work. They took him to the hospital. I had to give a statement to the police. Told them everything. They took notes, said they'd follow up. Mrs. Chin called an hour later, screaming. I'd never heard someone so angry. You had no right. No right. Do you know what you've done? I hung up on her. She came back that night. Cut her trip short. The police were waiting. I don't know what happened after that. I packed my stuff and left. I found out later that Mr. Chin was placed in a memory care facility. Mrs. Chin was charged with neglect and false imprisonment. The nurse lost her license. I think about Mr. Chin sometimes. Wonder if he ever found Linda. Wonder if he ever made it to that big meeting. But mostly I think about those nights I slept in that house, right below him. How he was up there, confused and scared, thinking he was somewhere else. Sometime else. And I think about Mrs. Chin. How she kissed his cheek before she left. How she said love you as she walked out the door. She left him locked up and flew to Europe. But she said, love you. I don't house sit anymore. The storage unit. My uncle died last year. We weren't close. He was my mom's brother, but they hadn't talked in maybe 10 years. Some old fight about money. You know how families are. When he died, he left me something in his will. Not money. Not his house. A storage unit. The lawyer called me. Said I'd inherited Unit 247 at Storage Safe on Highway 9. Paid up for the next 5 years. The key would be mailed to me. What's in it? I asked. I have no idea, the lawyer said. Your uncle was very specific. The unit goes to you and only you. You're not to open it for 6 months after his death. After that, it's yours to do with as you please. Why 6 months? He didn't say. Those were just his instructions. I thought about refusing it. Who needs a storage unit full of some dead uncle's junk? But curiosity got me. Why me? Why the 6-month wait? The key came a week later. Regular padlock key. Nothing special. I put it in my drawer and tried to forget about it, but I couldn't. I'd lie awake thinking about it. What could be in there? Why the mystery? I looked up the storage place online. It was about an hour away. 24-hour access. Climate controlled. Security cameras. Pretty standard. I waited 3 months. Then I couldn't stand it anymore. I drove out there on a Saturday morning. The place was huge. Rows and rows of orange doors. I found Unit 247 easy enough. middle of the complex. The padlock looked new. I stood there with the key in my hand. My uncle's instructions said wait 6 months, but he was dead. What difference did it make? I put the key in the lock, turned it. The lock popped open, but I didn't open the door. Something felt wrong, like I was being watched. I looked around. Nobody there. Just empty corridors and locked doors. I put the lock back on and left. I made it another month. Then I went back. This time I was determined to open it. Same feeling when I got there, like eyes on me. But I pushed through it, unlocked the padlock, pulled up the door. The unit was dark. I felt around for a light switch, found one. Fluorescent bulb flickered on. It was mostly empty. Some boxes in the back. An old desk. A filing cabinet. Not much for a 10 by 10 unit. I stepped inside. The air smelled weird. Not bad, just old. Like a library basement. The boxes were sealed with tape. I found a box cutter in the desk drawer and opened the first one. Photos. Hundreds of them. Old ones from the 70s and 80s by the look of them. I recognized my uncle in some. Much younger, full head of hair. There were other people too. Nobody I knew. But something was off about the photos. In every single one there was someone in the background. Same person. A woman. She was never the subject of the photo, just always there. Standing in the distance. Sitting at another table. Walking by. Always watching. I went through 3 boxes of photos. She was in every one. Same woman. She didn't seem to age even though the photos spanned years. The 4th box had documents. Legal stuff. Property deeds. Bank statements. And newspaper clippings. The clippings were about missing persons. All from the early 80s. All from different states. I counted 12 articles. Why would my uncle keep these? I opened the filing cabinet. More documents. These were different. Reports of some kind. Typed on old paper. Official looking. The headers said, Department of Unexplained Phenomena. I'd never heard of such a department. The reports were about sightings. Someone or something being seen in multiple places at once. The descriptions matched the woman from the photos. One report had a photo paper clipped to it. It was grainy, black and white, but it was her. The woman from all my uncle's photos. At the bottom, someone had written, Subject 247, Status, Active Surveillance. 247. Same as the unit number. I kept reading. The reports talked about investigations, interview transcripts, people claiming to see this woman before disasters, plane crashes, building collapses, natural disasters. Always there, always watching, never aging. The last folder was different. It was labeled with my name. Inside were photos of me, recent ones, at work, at the grocery store, getting coffee, all taken from a distance. And in every photo in the background was the woman. My hands were shaking. I looked at the most recent photo. It was dated a week ago. I was at the gas station near my house. And there, by the pump behind me, was the woman. Same face, same blank stare. I grabbed the folder and ran. Didn't lock the unit. Didn't care. I had to get out of there. In my car, I looked through more of the photos. She was in all of them. How had I never noticed her? This woman who'd apparently been following me. I drove home fast, kept checking my mirrors. Every woman I saw could have been her. At home, I spread the photos on my table, studied them. The woman never looked directly at the camera, always in profile or 3/4 view. But it was the same person. Had to be. I called my mom, asked about Uncle Pete, why they'd stopped talking. He went crazy, she said. Started talking about being followed. Said someone was watching our family. Paranoid delusions. I tried to help, but he just got worse. Did he ever mention a woman? Silence. Then, how do you know about that? Mom, what woman? She sighed. He said there was a woman who'd been following our family for generations. Said she appeared in old family photos. Said she was some kind of observer, documenting us, waiting for something. Waiting for what? He never said. Or maybe he didn't know. Sarah, please tell me you're not starting with this too. I didn't answer. I was looking at one of the photos. The recent one from the gas station. In the corner, barely visible, was a car. A blue sedan. There was a blue sedan parked across from my house right now. I have to go, I told my mom. I peeked through my blinds. The sedan was still there. Tinted windows. Engine off. I watched for an hour. Nobody got out. Nobody got in. I just sat there. Finally, I couldn't take it. I walked outside. Straight to the car. I was going to confront whoever this was. The car was empty. I looked inside. Nothing. No personal items. No trash. Like a rental. When I turned around, she was standing on my porch. The woman from the photos. Same face. Same expression. She looked exactly like she did in the pictures from the 70s. "Hello, Sarah," she said. Her voice was normal. Pleasant even. "Who are you?" "I'm an observer." "Observer of what?" "Your family." "Your uncle understood eventually. He was quite helpful." "Helpful how?" She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "He documented things for us. Kept records. Maintained the archive. Us. There are many observers. We watch. We record. We wait." "Wait for what?" "For the right time. Your family is special, Sarah. Has been for generations. We need to make sure you're progressing correctly." "I don't understand." "You will. Your uncle left you the storage unit because it's your turn now. To watch. To record. To prepare the next generation." "I won't do it. Whatever this is, I want no part of it." She tilted her head. "It's not a choice. It's genetics." "What? Purpose. You can fight it like your uncle did at first, or you can accept it. Either way, we'll be watching." She walked past me to the blue sedan. Got in. Drove away. I stood there for a long time. Then I went inside and looked at the photos again. Really looked. And I started to see it. Patterns. The woman appeared in photos before major events in my family's life. Before births. Before deaths. Before marriages. Before divorces. Always there. Always watching. I drove back to the storage unit that night. The door was still open. Everything was as I'd left it. I found more folders. Generations of documentation. Photos going back to the 1800s. And in every era, in every photo, somewhere in the background was a woman. Same face. Same expression. Different clothes for different time periods. But always the same woman. Or women. The reports mentioned multiple observers. I've spent the last 2 months going through everything. Learning. Understanding. My family isn't special in a good way. We're something else. Something that needs watching. Something that needs to be contained. And now it's my turn to help them watch. I see her sometimes. The woman. Different places. Always at a distance. She nods when she sees me. Like we're colleagues now. I started taking photos. Of my cousins. Their kids. Always making sure to capture who's in the background. Because someone's always in the background. Watching. Waiting. Recording. I understand now why my uncle wanted me to wait 6 months. He needed time. Time to prepare. Time to accept what he'd done. Time to die without the weight of it. But he passed it to me anyway. The storage unit is mine now. I've added my own files. My own photos. My own documentation. And when my time comes, I'll pass it on too. To some unsuspecting relative. With instructions to wait. With a key to a lock they shouldn't open. Because that's what we do. We watch. We record. We wait. And we're always in the background. The night shift nurse. I've been a nurse for 15 years. Mostly night shifts. The pay is better and I don't mind the quiet. Hospitals are different at night. Calmer. Most patients are sleeping. The chaos of day shift is gone. I was working the cardiac unit at Mercy General. Good hospital. Nice area. Not much drama usually. It was a Thursday night in October. We had a new patient in room 314. Mr. Garrett. 73 years old. Mild heart attack. He was stable, doing well. Should have been going home in a day or two. I did my rounds at midnight. Checked his vitals. Everything normal. He was sleeping peacefully. "How's he doing?" asked Janet, the other nurse on duty. "Fine. Vitals are good. Sound asleep." I went back to the nurse's station. Did some charting. Answered call bells. Normal night. At 2 a.m. I did rounds again. When I got to room 314, something was different. Mr. Garrett was awake. Sitting up in bed. Staring at the corner of the room. "Mr. Garrett? Everything okay?" He didn't look at me. Kept staring at the corner. "She's back," he said. "Who's back?" "The woman. She comes every night." I looked at the corner. Nothing there. Just the visitor's chair and the window. "There's nobody there, Mr. Garrett. Would you like something to help you sleep?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were wide. Scared. "You don't see her? She's right there. In the blue dress." I looked again. Still nothing. This happens sometimes. Medications can cause hallucinations. Or sometimes it's just the stress of being in the hospital. I made a note in his chart and gave him something for anxiety. He was asleep within minutes. The next night I was back. First thing I did was check on Mr. Garrett. He was sitting up again. Same corner. Same stare. Is she there again? I asked. He nodded. She doesn't talk. Just watches. She's waiting for something. What do you think she's waiting for? I don't know. But she's patient. She's got time. I sat with him for a while. Tried to redirect his attention. But he kept looking at that corner. Finally, I gave him another anxiety pill. The third night, Janet was checking on him while I handled another patient. She came to find me looking unsettled. Room 314 is asking for you, she said. What's wrong? He says the woman wants to talk to you. I sighed. The poor man was really having a hard time with these hallucinations. I went to his room. He was sitting up as usual. But this time he looked relieved to see me. She says she knows you, he said. Mr. Garrett, there's nobody there. She says you took care of her husband. Room 308. Last month. I felt cold suddenly. We did have a patient in 308 last month. Mr. Peterson. Came in with chest pains. Died 3 days later. Unexpected. She says you were kind to him, Mr. Garrett continued. She wanted to thank you. Mr. Garrett, how do you know about Mr. Peterson? I don't. She told me. The woman in blue. Mrs. Peterson. She says the blue dress was his favorite. I had to sit down. Mrs. Peterson always wore blue when she visited. Every day. I remembered commenting on it. She says she's been waiting to tell you something, Mr. Garrett said. About her husband. About what really happened. This is not possible, I said. But my voice was shaking. She says to check his chart. Page 3. The medication list. Look at what was ordered versus what was given. I left the room. Went straight to the records room. Pulled Mr. Peterson's chart. Page 3. Medication list. I compared it to the administration record. There was a discrepancy. He was ordered one medication but given another. Similar names. Easy mistake. But the wrong one could have. It could have caused his death. I checked who administered it. Dr. Wells. He'd been on duty that night. I put the chart back. Went to Mr. Garrett's room. She's gone, he said. But she said you'd know what to do. I did know. I had to report it. A medication error that resulted in death. It would mean an investigation. Dr. Wells would be suspended, maybe lose his license. But I had to do it. I filed the report that morning. The investigation started immediately. Dr. Wells admitted to the error. Said he'd been exhausted, working too many shifts. The hospital settled with Mrs. Peterson's family out of court. Mr. Garrett went home 2 days later. Before he left, he pulled me aside. She came back one more time, he said. Last night. She said to tell you she's at peace now. And she said to be careful. There are others watching. Others? That's all she said. I thought about that for weeks. Others watching. What did that mean? Then I started noticing things. Patients would stare at empty corners. Always the same corner in each room. Upper right by the window. They described different people. A young man in room 302. An elderly woman in room 318. A child in room 310. But the descriptions were consistent. The young man always wore a leather jacket. The elderly woman had white hair in a bun. The child carried a teddy bear. I started keeping notes. Privately. Off the record. The young man in the leather jacket? Motorcycle accident victim from 2 years ago. Died in room 302. The elderly woman? Stroke patient. Died in room 318 last year. The child? I couldn't find any record of a child dying in 310. I checked back 10 years. Nothing. Then Janet mentioned something. My grandmother used to work here. Back in the 70s. She said the pediatric ward used to be on the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor. Where cardiac is now. I went to the hospital archives. Found old floor plans. Sure enough, room 310 used to be part of pediatrics. I found the records. 1978. A 6-year-old boy. Leukemia. Died in what was now room 310. He was buried with his teddy bear. Every patient who'd seen the child described the same teddy bear. Brown. Missing an eye. Worn ear. I couldn't explain it. Didn't try to. But I started paying attention when patients mentioned visitors. Most of the time, the visitors just watched. But sometimes, like with Mr. Garrett, they had messages. Mrs. Rodriguez in 305 said her visitor, an old man, kept pointing at her 4. I checked it. The flow rate was wrong. Could have been dangerous if left uncorrected. Mr. Kim in 312 said a young woman was gesturing at his chart. I looked at it. His allergy list was incomplete. He was about to be given something that would have caused a reaction. The visitors were helping, warning us, protecting the patients. I never told anyone. Who would believe me? But I started checking whatever the visitors pointed out. Always found something. Janet noticed my behavior. You okay? You've been acting strange lately. Just being thorough, I said. But I wasn't okay, because I'd started seeing them too. Not in patient rooms. In the hallways, the break room, the parking garage. They didn't look like ghosts. Not transparent or glowing or anything like that. They looked like people. Real people. Except nobody else could see them. The first one I saw was a middle-aged man in the hallway. He was wearing a hospital gown. Just standing there looking lost. Can I help you? I asked. He looked surprised. You can see me? I nodded. I'm looking for my room. 319, but I can't find it. Room 319 was at the end of the hall. I pointed. Thank you, he said. I've been looking for so long. He walked away, disappeared around the corner. I checked the census. No patient in 319. The room was empty. Had been for a week. After that, I saw them more often. Always at night. Always looking for something. Their room. Their doctor. Their family. I tried to help when I could. Directions. Information. Sometimes just listening. They told me things. About the hospital. About the staff. About the patients. Dr. Harrison is drinking again, one told me. You can smell it on him. Don't let him operate tonight. I found an excuse to get close to Dr. Harrison. Smelled alcohol. Reported it anonymously. He was sent home. The surgery was rescheduled. The blood in the blood bank, another said. Check lot number 47A. Something's wrong with it. I checked. The lot had been recalled, but we hadn't been notified yet. It was contaminated. We pulled it before anyone could use it. They helped me, and I helped them. A strange partnership between the living and the whatever they were. But then something changed. I was working my usual shift. It was quiet. Too quiet. I realized I hadn't seen any visitors all night. The patients weren't mentioning them either. Where is everyone? I asked out loud in the empty hallway. Hiding, a voice said behind me. I turned. It was the woman in blue, Mrs. Peterson. Hiding from what? From him. He came in tonight. Room 320. Room 320 was our newest admission. Mr. Vance. Elderly man. Heart problems. What's wrong with him? He's not here to get better, she said. He's here to collect. Collect what? Us, the ones who stayed. He takes us away. Makes us go somewhere else. Somewhere dark. I don't understand. Some people, when they die, they have a gift. Or a curse. They can see us. Control us. Make us do things. He's one of them. And he's been looking for a place like this. Where many of us gather. What can I do? Don't let him die here. If he dies here, he'll have power over every spirit in this place. Get him out. Transfer him. Anything. But don't let him die here. She faded away. I went to room 320. Mr. Vance was awake, smiling. Hello, nurse, he said. His voice was odd, layered, like multiple people talking at once. How are you feeling, Mr. Vance? Oh, I'm wonderful. This place has such energy. Can you feel it? I checked his monitors. His vitals were terrible. He was dying. Maybe hours left. We should talk about transferring you to the ICU, I said. No, I like it here. This is where I want to be when the time comes. Mr. Vance. Do you see them too? He interrupted. The Watchers. I've always seen them, since I was young. They think they're helping, but really they're trapped. Stuck between worlds. I can free them. How? By taking them with me. When I go, they go. All of them. This whole hospital will be cleaned. I left the room. Called the doctor. Insisted Mr. Vance needed to be in the ICU. The doctor disagreed. His condition wasn't that critical, he said, but I knew better. I went back to check on him an hour later. The room was cold. Much colder than it should be. Mr. Vance was sitting up. And he wasn't alone. I could see them. Dozens of them. The visitors. Standing around his bed. But they looked different. Frozen. Like statues. Ah, you can see them, Mr. Vance said. Good. Watch this. He raised his hand. The figures moved. Not voluntarily. Like puppets. Stop, I said. What? This is what I do. What I've always done. I collect the lost ones. Give them purpose. They're not lost. They're helping people. They're trapped. Neither here nor there. I'm doing them a favor. More figures appeared, filling the room, spilling into the hallway, all moving slowly toward him, fighting it but unable to stop. I saw Mrs. Peterson among them, the young man in the leather jacket, the child with the teddy bear, all of them being pulled in. No, I said. I grabbed Mr. Vance's arm. Let them go. He laughed. You can't stop this. It's already begun. When my heart stops, they all come with me. Every spirit in this hospital, maybe in the whole city. I've been preparing for this moment for years. His monitor started alarming, his heart rate dropping. I had to do something. But what? I couldn't let him die. But I couldn't save him either. He was too far gone. Then I remembered something Mrs. Peterson had said. Don't let him die here. Here. In the hospital. I hit the code blue button. The team rushed in, started CPR. Dr. Wells was the attending. Ironic. We need to get him out, I said. Transfer to St. Mary's. They have better cardiac facilities. He's too unstable, Dr. Wells said. We have to try. It was chaos. CPR. Medications. Arguments about transfer. And all around us, invisible to everyone but me, the spirits struggled against Mr. Vance's pull. Finally, Dr. Wells agreed. We got Mr. Vance stabilized enough to move. Loaded him in the ambulance. I watched it drive away. Lights flashing. Sirens blaring. He died en route. Somewhere on Highway 12. Not in the hospital. Not where he'd planned. The temperature in room 320 returned to normal. The spirits were gone. Not collected. Just gone back to wherever they usually were. I saw Mrs. Peterson one more time. A week later. In the hallway. Thank you, she said. You saved us. All of us. Is he gone? Really gone? Yes. He had power, but only in certain places. Places where life and death meet often. Hospitals. Nursing homes. Battlefields. He died in between. No power there. Will there be others like him? There are always others. But now we know to watch for them. And we know you'll help. She smiled and faded away. I still work night shift. Still see the visitors sometimes. Not as often as before. They're more careful now. More selective about who they appear to. But they're still there. Watching. Helping. Warning. And I watch for the collectors. People like Mr. Vance who come to hospitals for the wrong reasons. Who see the spirits as things to be owned or controlled. So far there haven't been any. But I stay ready. Because that's what night shift nurses do. We take care of people. The living and the dead. And sometimes we save them from things worse than dying. The substitute teacher. I'm a substitute teacher. I've been for 3 years. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills. You go where they need you. Different school every few days. Different kids. Different problems. Last month, I got a call for a long-term position. 6th grade. McKinley Elementary. The regular teacher, Mrs. Franklin, was out on medical leave. They needed someone for at least 6 weeks. I like longer assignments. You get to know the kids. Build routines. It's easier than starting fresh every day. McKinley was an older school. Built in the 50s. Red brick. Big windows. The kind they don't make anymore. The principal, Mr. Davidson, met me on my first day. Room 24, he said, handing me the keys. Mrs. Franklin left lesson plans. Should be straightforward. Any problem kids I should know about? He hesitated. Well, just stick to the seating chart. Don't rearrange anything. Odd advice, but okay. Room 24 was at the end of the hall. 2nd floor. Nice big windows facing the playground. Desks arranged in neat rows. 25 desks, but the class list only showed 24 students. The extra desk was in the back corner, separated from the others. No name tag. I figured a student had moved or something. I'd ask about it later. The kids started arriving at 8:30. Good group. Quiet. Maybe too quiet for 6th graders. I did roll call. Everyone was there. They all sat in their assigned seats. Nobody looked at the empty desk in the corner. Okay, I said. I'm Mr. Roberts. I'll be your teacher while Mrs. Franklin is away. Let's go over the rules. Don't touch his desk. It was a girl in the front row. Melissa, according to the seating chart. Whose desk? The class got quieter, if that was possible. Just don't touch it, Melissa said. And don't sit there. And don't move it, Mrs. Franklin said. I looked at the empty desk. Regular desk. Nothing special about it, but the way the kids were acting. Okay, I said. We'll leave it alone. The day went fine. Math, reading, science. The kids were well behaved. Almost eerily so. They did their work, raised their hands, followed directions, but nobody looked at that desk. At lunch, I asked the teacher next door, Mrs. Garcia, about it. "Oh," she said, "you have room 24. Did Davidson warn you?" "Warn me about what?" She looked uncomfortable. "It's probably nothing. Kids being kids. But they think that desk. They think someone sits there. A ghost." She laughed, nervously. "Something like that. Mrs. Franklin just goes with it. Easier than fighting them." "So there's no student assigned to that desk?" "Not for years. Not since." "Since what?" "Nothing. Just be careful. Room 24 has a history." She wouldn't say more. That afternoon during art class, I watched the kids draw. Normal kid stuff. Houses, animals, superheroes. Except one boy, Timothy. He was drawing the classroom. Detailed. Every desk. Every student. Including someone at the corner desk. "Who's that?" I asked, pointing at the figure. Timothy looked up at me, scared. "Nobody," he said. He quickly scribbled over the figure. After school, I stayed to grade papers. The room was quiet. Just me and the empty desks. I walked over to the corner desk. Looked closer. It was old. Older than the others. The top was covered in scratches. Not random scratches. Letters. Words. "Help me. Can't leave. Cold." I touched the desk. It was cold. Much colder than the rest of the room. "You shouldn't be here after dark." I jumped. Mr. Davidson was in the doorway. "Just grading papers," I said. "Not after dark. Not in this room. School policy." "Why?" "Just policy. Come on. I'll walk you out." As we left, I looked back at the room. For just a second, I thought I saw someone sitting at the corner desk. A boy. No, staring at me. Then the lights went off and he was gone. That night, I did research. Looked up McKinley Elementary. Found old newspaper articles. 1987. Boy dies at school. Samuel Morrison. 6th grade. Severe asthma attack. Died at his desk before help could arrive. Room 24. Corner desk. The next day, I watched the kids more carefully. They all avoided that corner. Took the long way around to the pencil sharpener. Stayed away from that section of the room. During silent reading, I heard something. Whispering. Coming from the corner. I looked. The desk was empty. But the whispering continued. "Does anyone else hear that?" I asked. The kids looked at me. Then at each other. "Hear what, Mr. Roberts?" Melissa asked. But her eyes flicked to the corner. "Nothing. Never mind." The whispering stopped. At lunch, Timothy stayed behind. "Mr. Roberts? Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "He doesn't like strangers." "Who doesn't?" "Samuel. He's been here a long time. He's lonely. But he doesn't trust new teachers." "Timothy, there's nobody." "He's there. We all see him. Mrs. Franklin sees him too. She talks to him sometimes. Tells him about the lessons. Includes him." "And if I don't include him?" Timothy looked scared. "Bad things happen." He left before I could ask what kind of bad things. That afternoon, I decided to test it. During history, I addressed the corner desk. "Samuel, we're talking about the Civil War. Page 127 in your book." The kids relaxed, visibly. Some even smiled. I felt ridiculous, but I kept going. Included the empty desk in discussions. Called on Samuel occasionally, then moved on when there was no answer. The class responded well. They participated more. Seemed happier. After school, I stayed again. Alone in the room. "Samuel?" I said to the empty desk. "I know you're here. I want to help." "Nothing. The kids told me about you. I'm sorry about what happened." The temperature dropped. My breath came out in clouds. "I'm not Mrs. Franklin," I continued, "but I'm trying. What do you need?" The whisper started again. Louder this time. I could almost make out words. "Can't leave, trapped, cold, so cold. Why can't you leave?" The desk started shaking. Slightly at first, then violently. Papers flew off. The chair tipped over. Then everything stopped. The room warmed up. The desk was still, but there was something on it. A piece of paper. Yellow. I picked it up. It was a note. A child's handwriting. "Dear Mom, I don't feel good today. My chest hurts. But Mrs. Cooper says I can't go to the nurse again. She says I'm faking. Please come get me. Love, Samuel." The note was dated October 15, 1987, the day he died. I took the note to Mr. Davidson the next morning. His face went white. "Where did you find this?" I told him. He didn't seem surprised. Mrs. Cooper was the teacher then, he said. She didn't believe Samuel was really sick. Thought he was trying to get out of a test. She made him stay at his desk. By the time she realized he was really in distress, it was too late. What happened to her? She quit. Never taught again. The guilt. And Samuel? You've seen him, haven't you? They all do eventually. Everyone who teaches that room. Why don't you just close the room? Use a different one? We've tried. When we leave room 24 empty, things happen. Lights flicker. Doors slam. Cold spots everywhere. It's better to keep someone in there. Keep him company. That's why Mrs. Franklin has been there so long? 20 years. She understands him. Talks to him. Makes him feel included. But now she's sick and you need someone to keep him calm. He nodded. I went back to room 24. The kids were already there. Sitting quietly. Waiting. Good morning, everyone, I said. Good morning, Samuel. A pencil rolled off the corner desk. The kids giggled. He says good morning, Timothy said. I taught the rest of the day normally, including Samuel and everything. And slowly I started to understand. He wasn't scary. He was just a kid who died alone and afraid. A kid who never got to go home. After school I stayed again. This time I brought something. An inhaler. I bought it at the pharmacy. I placed it on his desk. This is for you, I said. So you're not scared anymore. So you know someone cares. The room got cold, then warm, then cold again. The inhaler moved. Just an inch, then back. Thank you, a voice whispered. Yeah, soft, grateful. I taught there for 6 weeks. Every day I included Samuel. Talked to him. Sometimes when the kids were working quietly, I'd see him. Just for a moment. A pale boy in outdated clothes, sitting at his desk, doing his work. He never caused problems. Not once. Just the opposite. He helped. Pencils would roll toward kids who needed them. Pages would turn to the right spot. Once, when a girl was crying over a hard math problem, her paper shifted. The first step of the solution appeared in faint pencil. The kids accepted it. Accepted him. He was just another classmate. Different, but theirs. On my last day, I said goodbye to the class. Told them Mrs. Franklin would be back Monday. What about Samuel? Melissa asked. Will you say goodbye to him? I looked at the corner desk. For once, I could see him clearly. Sitting there. Watching me. Waiting. Goodbye, Samuel, I said. It was nice meeting you. Take care of Mrs. Franklin when she comes back. He smiled. The first time I'd seen him smile. Then he faded away. But not gone. Never gone. Just waiting. I substitute at different schools now. But sometimes I go back to McKinley. Walk past room 24. Peek inside. He's always there. At his desk. Where he'll always be. Because some kids never leave school. And some teachers learn that's okay. The graveyard shift. The security guard. I work security at Riverside Mall. Not the best job, but it's steady. Good benefits. I mostly work nights after the stores close. Walk the halls, check the doors, make sure nobody's trying to break in. The mall's been dying for years. Half the stores are empty. The food court only has 2 restaurants left. During the day you see more employees than shoppers. But at night it's different. That's when you notice things. I started 6 months ago. The guy who trained me, Carl, he'd been there 15 years. First night he showed me around. Told me which doors stick, where the cameras have blind spots, how to reset the alarm. Then he said something weird. Don't go to the 2nd floor after 2 a.m. Why? I asked. Just don't. Make your rounds before 2, then stay on the 1st floor. Trust me. I thought he was messing with me, trying to scare the new guy. But he looked serious. What happens after 2? He shook his head. Nothing good. Just follow the rule and you'll be fine. I figured it was some kind of hazing thing. Maybe they had bets on whether the new guy would get spooked. The first few weeks were normal. I do my rounds every hour. Check the service corridors. Make sure the loading dock was secure. Pretty boring, really. I followed Carl's rule about the 2nd floor. Not because I believed him. Just because it was easier. Why make waves? But after a month I got curious. It was a Tuesday night. Slow even for us. I'd done my rounds early. It was 2:15. I was sitting in the security office watching the monitors. The 2nd floor looked normal. Empty stores. Dim emergency lighting. Nothing moving. I decided to check it out. What's the worst that could happen? I took the escalator up. The metal steps groaned under my weight. Everything up there was older, more run down. Most of these stores had been closed for years. I walked past the old KB Toys, the Walden Books, the Radio Shack, all empty, windows dark. Then I heard it, music, faint, like it was coming from far away. I followed the sound. It led me to the old arcade. Games Galaxy, the sign said, closed in 2009. The music was coming from inside. Old video game music. Pac-Man, Galaga. Games I remembered from when I was a kid. The gate was down, but I could see lights inside. Flashing, blinking, like the games were on. That wasn't possible. The power to these stores had been cut years ago. I unlocked the gate, pushed it up just enough to duck under. The arcade was exactly how I remembered it. Rows of games. Skee-ball in the back. Prize counter on the left. Even that weird carpet with the cosmic bowling alley design. And the games were on. All of them. I walked through looking at the screens. They were playing themselves. Demo mode. But when I stopped at Street Fighter 2, the characters turned to look at me. Not at each other. At me. I backed away. Bumped into someone. I spun around. Was a kid. Maybe 13. Wearing a Games Galaxy employee shirt. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. "I'm security. I'm checking." "Not after 2, he said. "That's the rule." "Who are you?" He smiled. Sad smile. "I'm Kevin. I work here." "This place has been closed for 15 years. Has it?" "Feels like yesterday to me." I looked closer at him. He was pale. Too pale. And I could see through him. Just barely. Like looking through dirty glass. "You're dead?" "Yeah. But I still have to work my shift. Every night. 2 to 6. "That's not possible." He shrugged. "Lots of things aren't possible. But here we are." He walked over to the prize counter. Started arranging the stuffed animals. They were all there. The cheap toys and candy. The giant bears that cost 10,000 tickets. "What happened to you?" I asked. "Break-in. Summer of 2009. Last week before we closed for good. Some guys wanted the cash from the registers. I was here doing inventory. Told them the safe was already empty. They didn't believe me." He touched his side. I saw a dark stain on his shirt. Bled out right there by the Mortal Kombat machine. Took 20 minutes. Nobody heard me calling for help. "I'm sorry." "Not your fault. Besides, it's not so bad. I like this job. Still do. And now I never have to leave. But you're alone." He laughed. "No, not alone. None of us are alone here. Us. Come on. I'll show you." He led me out of the arcade. Down the hall. Past more empty stores. But they weren't empty anymore. The Old Navy had customers. Ghostly figures browsing the racks. The Spencer's was full of teenagers. See-through kids looking at lava lamps and joke gifts. Every closed store was open. Everyone had people inside. All of them pale. All of them translucent. "The mall never really closes," Kevin said. "Not for us. We're always here. Shopping. Working. Existing." "How many?" "Dozens. Maybe more. Everyone who died here. Heart attacks in the parking lot. Accidents on the escalators. That lady who choked in the food court. We all stay. Why? Where else would we go? This is our place. Our routine. Death doesn't change that." We passed the old Macy's. I could see figures inside. Shopping for clothes that weren't really there. "That's Mrs. Chen," Kevin said, pointing to an elderly woman. "Died while Christmas shopping. 2015. Still looking for the perfect gift for her grandson." "This is insane." "Is it? You felt it, haven't you?" "The mall at night. It's different. Like it's waiting for something. For someone." He was right. I had felt it. The weight of the empty stores. The sense that something was watching. "Why show me this?" I asked. "Because you came up after 2. That makes you one of us now. Part of the night shift." "I'm not dead." "Not yet. But you've seen us. That creates a connection. You'll always see us now. Every night. Whether you want to or not. I can just quit. Get another job." Kevin smiled that sad smile again. "You could. But you won't. Because now you know we're here. Alone. Forgotten. And you're too good a person to abandon us." He was right. Damn him, he was right. "What do you want from me?" "Just company. Someone to talk to. Someone who remembers we exist." Carl did it for years. Came up after 2. Checked on us. Made sure we were okay. Carl knows. Of course. Why do you think he warned you? He was trying to protect you. From this. From us. But you had to see for yourself. We were back at the arcade. Kevin went inside. started turning off the games. Closing time, he said. Even the dead have schedules. What happens at 6? We rest. I'd wait for 2 a.m. to come again. It always does. The lights in the arcade dimmed. Kevin started to fade. Will I see you tomorrow? I asked. Every night, 2 to 6. That's my shift. That's all our shifts. He disappeared. The arcade went dark. The gate slammed shut on its own. I ran down the escalator, back to the security office. Sat there shaking until my shift ended. I thought about quitting. Spent all day writing my resignation letter. But I didn't turn it in, because Kevin was right. I couldn't abandon them. These people who died alone, who were stuck in their routines, who just wanted someone to remember they existed. So I went back, night after night. Now I know them all. Kevin at the arcade, Mrs. Chen at Macy's, Tom who had a heart attack in the parking garage, Sarah who fell down the escalator, the food court lady whose name I never learned. I do my regular rounds before 2. Then I go upstairs, check on them, talk to them, listen to their stories. They're always the same stories, but I listen anyway, because that's what they need. Someone to see them, someone to care. Carl retired last month, moved to Florida. On his last night, he came up to the 2nd floor with me. Take care of them, he said. I will. It's a burden, knowing they're here, seeing them every night. But it's important. Someone has to remember. Why security? Because we're the only ones here at night. The only ones who can see them when they're active. During the day they sleep. Right. But at night they live. As much as they can. He left me a note. List of all their names. Their stories. Their favorite places. I've added to it. Made it more detailed. Someday I'll pass it on to whoever replaces me. Because the mall is dying. Every month another store closes. Soon it'll be demolished. Turned into condos or a parking lot. But they'll still be here. The night shift. The ones who can't leave. And someone needs to remember them. Someone needs to care. Even if it's just a security guard walking empty halls talking to ghosts. It's not the job I signed up for. But it's the job I have now. Every night. 2 to 6. That's my real shift. That's when I'm needed most. Not to guard the mall. But to guard the memories of those who never left. The midnight caller. The first time my grandmother's old rotary phone rang at exactly 3:33 a.m., I thought I was dreaming. I had just moved into her house 3 weeks after the funeral. The place still smelled like her lavender perfume and the vanilla candles she always kept burning. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The doilies on every surface, the china cats in the cabinet, and that ancient black rotary phone on the hallway table that hadn't worked in years. At least that's what I thought. The ring was sharp and metallic, cutting through the silence of the night like a rusty blade. I lay in bed, my heart pounding, waiting for it to stop. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, then silence. I told myself it was just the house settling, or maybe some electrical glitch. Old houses make strange noises after all. I pulled the covers up to my chin and tried to go back to sleep. The next night it happened again. 3:33 a.m. exactly. This time I got up and crept down the hallway, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. The phone sat there, innocent and silent, its black surface gleaming in the moonlight filtering through the lace curtains. I picked up the receiver and held it to my ear. Nothing. Not even a dial tone. I traced the cord with my fingers. It wasn't even plugged into the wall. It hadn't been connected in years, not since Grandma got her modern phone in the kitchen. But on the 3rd night, when it rang again at 3:33 a.m., I was ready. I sat on the stairs watching the phone, waiting. The ring seemed louder this time, more insistent. My hand trembled as I reached for the receiver. Hello. My voice was barely a whisper. At first, there was only static, like distant thunder or waves crashing on a shore very far away. Then I heard it, breathing. Slow, labored breathing that made my skin crawl. Who is this? I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. The breathing continued for a moment, then a voice, so faint I had to strain to hear it, whispered, "She's waiting for you." The line went dead. I dropped the receiver like it was on fire. It clattered against the table, the sound echoing through the silent house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hang it back up. She's waiting for you. What did that mean? Who was waiting? My grandmother was dead. I'd been at her funeral. I'd watched them lower her casket into the ground. The next day, I tried to convince myself it had been a dream. But when I examined the phone in the daylight, I found something that made my blood run cold. There were fingerprints on the receiver, small, delicate fingerprints that weren't mine. And they were fresh. I spent that day going through my grandmother's things looking for, I didn't know what, some explanation maybe, some reason why an unplugged phone would ring in the middle of the night. In her bedroom closet, buried under boxes of old photographs and yellowed letters, I found a journal. The entries were dated from the 1950s, written in my grandmother's neat cursive. Most were mundane, grocery lists, appointment reminders, notes about the weather. But one entry, dated October 13, 1953, made me stop cold. The phone rings every night at 3:33. Mother says it's Papa calling from the other side. She answers it sometimes, speaks to him for hours. I tell her Papa's been dead for 3 years, but she just smiles and says, "Not to him, dear. Not to him." I slammed the journal shut, my heart racing. My great-grandmother had been known for her eccentricities. The family had always said she'd gone a bit soft in the head after my great-grandfather died. But that night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, watching television with the volume turned up loud. But at 3:33 a.m. I could still hear it, that metallic ring cutting through the laugh track of some old sitcom. I didn't answer it. The next night, I tried unplugging every phone in the house, even though the rotary wasn't connected to anything. The ringing came anyway, louder and more insistent. It rang 7 times before stopping. On the 6th night, I'd had enough. When the phone rang, I marched down the hallway and yanked the receiver up. "What do you want?" I shouted into the phone. This time, the voice was clearer, though still faint and strange. It was a woman's voice, old and trembling. "Sarah? Sarah, is that you?" My breath caught. Sarah was my name. But the voice, it couldn't be. "Grandma?" The word came out as barely more than a breath. "Oh, Sarah, I've been trying to reach you. I have to warn you about The line crackled with static and her voice faded in and out. "Warn me about what?" "Grandma, I can't hear you." "In the basement. Whatever you do, don't go in there." The line went dead. I stood there in the dark hallway, the receiver pressed against my ear, listening to nothing. My grandmother had been trying to warn me about something in the basement, but I'd been in the basement dozens of times since moving in. It was just a typical basement. Some old furniture, holiday decorations, a few boxes of junk. Still, the next morning, I went down to take another look. I brought a flashlight even though the overhead light worked fine. Something about my grandmother's warning had unsettled me deeply. I searched every corner, moved every box, checked behind every piece of furniture. I was about to give up when I noticed something odd about the back wall. One section looked newer than the rest, as if it had been recently plastered and painted. Using a screwdriver, I chipped away at the plaster. It came away easily, too easily, revealing a wooden door behind it. My hands were trembling as I pulled it open. The smell hit me first, musty and sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. Behind the door was a small room no bigger than a closet. And inside was a telephone. An old rotary phone, identical to the one upstairs, sitting on a small table. But this one was connected to the wall, its cord disappearing into a hole drilled through the foundation. Next to the phone was a notebook, filled with the same neat cursive as my grandmother's journal. But these entries were different. They were all phone numbers, hundreds of them, with names and dates beside each one. The dates went back decades, and the most recent entry was from just a week before my grandmother died. My name was at the bottom of the list, with tomorrow's date beside it. I backed out of the room, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I ran upstairs and grabbed my cell phone, calling the only person I could think of, my mother. "Mom, I need to ask you something about Grandma. Did she ever mention anything about phones? Or the basement?" There was a long pause. When my mother spoke, her voice was careful, measured. "Sarah, why are you asking about this? Just tell me, please." I heard her sigh. "Your grandmother, she had a gift. That's what she called it anyway. She said she could speak to the dead through the telephone. She helped people, Sarah. People who had lost loved ones who needed closure. She would connect them." "Connect them how?" "I don't know the details. She never told me everything. But Sarah, she made me promise something before she died. She said if you ever asked about the phones, I was to tell you to leave that house immediately. Don't pack, don't ask questions, just leave." "Mom, what are you talking about? What's wrong with the house?" "Sarah, please, just trust me. Get out of there. Now." But it was too late. As she spoke, I heard it. The phone in the basement began to ring. Not at 3:33 a.m., but at 3:33 p.m., 12 hours off schedule. "Mom, I have to go." "Sarah, no. Don't answer it. Whatever you do, don't." I hung up on her and made my way back to the basement. The ringing was so loud it seemed to shake the walls. I descended the stairs slowly, each step feeling like a mile. The hidden room was glowing with a soft, pulsing light. The phone continued to ring, its sound now more like a scream than a ring. I reached for the receiver, my hand moving as if controlled by something else. Hello. The voice that answered wasn't my grandmother's. It wasn't human at all. It was a chorus of voices, hundreds of them, all speaking at once in a language I didn't understand. But somehow I knew what they were saying. They were calling me home. The notebook on the table had changed. Where my name had been written, there was now a new entry, a phone number I didn't recognize and a name, David Miller. I hung up the phone and backed away. As I did, I heard another phone ringing, the one upstairs. Then another somewhere else in the house. Then another. Soon, the entire house was filled with the sound of ringing phones, all slightly out of sync, creating a maddening cacophony. I ran upstairs and grabbed my keys, not bothering to pack anything. As I reached the front door, the hallway phone, the one that had started it all, rang one more time. Against every instinct, I stopped and picked it up. Sarah. It was my grandmother's voice, clear as day. I'm so sorry. I tried to warn you. I bound them to the house, to the phones. It was the only way to keep them from spreading. But now that you've answered the basement phone, Grandma, what are they? What do they want? They're the ones who didn't make it across. The ones who got lost between here and there. I helped them for so many years, gave them a voice, a connection. But some of them don't want to cross over. They want to stay. They want to use the living as anchors. How do I stop them? You can't. Once you've heard them, really heard them, they're with you always. The only thing you can do is what I did, contain them. Keep them bound to one place. Never let them spread. But I can't stay here forever. Then find someone else. Someone who will answer when you call. Someone who will take your place when the time comes. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. The line went dead. All the phones in the house stopped ringing at once, leaving a silence so complete it was almost painful. I stood there for a long moment, key in hand, freedom just a few feet away. But I could feel them now, pressing against the inside of my skull, whispering in voices that weren't quite words. If I left, they would follow, and they would use me to reach others. So I stayed. That was 3 months ago. The phones still ring, but now I answer them. I speak to the voices on the other end, give them what comfort I can. Some nights I help them cross over. Other nights I simply listen to their stories, their regrets, their pleas. And sometimes, late at night, I dial numbers from the notebook. I let it ring exactly 3 times, then hang up. I'm not ready to pass this burden on yet. But someday someone will answer. Someone will hear my voice, faint and strange, whispered across impossible distances. And when they do, I'll tell them the same thing my grandmother told me. She's waiting for you. Because by then I will be the new tenant. Marcus had always prided himself on being a practical man. When he found the studio apartment on Craigslist for half the going rate in the neighborhood, he didn't question his good fortune. He simply scheduled a viewing, liked what he saw, and signed the lease that same day. The landlord, Mrs. Chin, seemed relieved to have found a tenant. She was a small woman in her 70s, with kind eyes that held something Marcus couldn't quite identify, perhaps sadness or maybe worry. You seem like a responsible young man, she had said, handing him the keys. Just remember, if you hear anything unusual, it's probably just the pipes. Old building, you understand. Marcus had nodded, thinking nothing of it. Every old building had its quirks. The apartment was perfect for his needs, a decent-sized studio with a small kitchen area, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub, and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. The furniture that came with it was a bit dated but in good condition. The only odd thing was a large wardrobe against one wall that seemed to be bolted to both the floor and wall. That stays, Mrs. Chen had said firmly when she saw him examining it. It's structural. Very important for the building's integrity. Marcus had found this explanation bizarre, but for the price he was paying, he wasn't about to complain about an immovable wardrobe. His first week in the apartment was uneventful. He settled into his new routine. Work during the day, dinner at the small table by the window, a few hours of Netflix before bed. The neighbors were quiet, the street noise minimal. It was everything he'd hoped for. Then came the scratching. It started on a Tuesday night, just as Marcus was drifting off to sleep. A soft, rhythmic scratching sound, like fingernails on wood. He sat up, listening. It seemed to be coming from inside the walls. Mice probably. Or maybe squirrels in the attic. He made a mental note to mention it to Mrs. Chen and went back to sleep. But the scratching continued the next night. And the next. Always starting around midnight, always the same rhythm, scratch, 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 pause. Scratch, 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 pause. By Friday, Marcus was exhausted. He tried earplugs, white noise, even sleeping on the couch instead of the bed. Nothing helped. The scratching seemed to follow him, always sounding like it was coming from just behind wherever he was trying to sleep. He called Mrs. Chen on Saturday morning. "The pipes," she said immediately before he'd even finished explaining. "Yes, they do that sometimes. Very annoying, I know. I'll have someone look at it." But no one came. The scratching grew louder over the weekend. By Sunday night, it sounded less like small animals and more like, well, Marcus didn't want to think about what it sounded like. But his mind kept returning to the same image, human fingernails, scratching desperately at wood. On Monday, he decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, he checked every inch of the apartment's walls, looking for holes, cracks, any sign of pest infestation. He found nothing. The walls were solid, recently painted, without so much as a scuff mark, except for the wall with the wardrobe. As he approached the massive piece of furniture, the scratching stopped. The sudden silence was somehow more unnerving than the noise had been. Marcus stood there, flashlight in hand, staring at the wardrobe. It was made of dark wood, almost black, with intricate carvings along its edges. The doors were locked and there was no visible key. He grabbed the handles and pulled. The doors didn't budge. He pulled harder, putting his full weight into it. Nothing. That's when he noticed the scratches. They were faint, almost invisible unless you were looking closely. But there they were, deep gouges in the wood around the locks, as if someone had tried desperately to claw their way out. Marcus stumbled backward, his heart racing. Those weren't scratches from the outside. They were from the inside. He called Mrs. Chin immediately, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He left 3 messages, each more frantic than the last. She didn't call back. That night, the scratching was accompanied by something new, whispering. Faint, barely audible, but definitely there. Marcus pressed his ear against the wardrobe door, trying to make out the words. "Please, let me out, so dark, can't breathe, please." He jerked away from the door, his skin crawling. Someone was in there. Someone was trapped inside the wardrobe. Marcus grabbed a hammer from his toolbox and attacked the lock. The metal was old and rusty, and after several blows, it shattered. He wrenched the doors open, and found only clothes. Row upon row of vintage clothing, dresses, suits, coats, all from what looked like the 1960s or 70s. The wardrobe was deep, much deeper than it appeared from the outside. Marcus pushed through the hanging garments, expecting to find the back wall. Instead, his hand met empty air. He shone his flashlight into the depths of the wardrobe. The beam revealed that it extended far beyond what should have been possible, given the apartment's layout. The back of the wardrobe should have been against the building's outer wall, but instead, there was a narrow passage that seemed to go on forever. The whispering grew louder. "Hello?" Marcus called into the darkness. "Is someone there?" The whispering stopped. Then, from somewhere far back in that impossible passage, came a sound that made Marcus's blood freeze. Footsteps. Slow, shuffling footsteps getting closer. He slammed the wardrobe doors shut and backed away. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the hammer. He needed to get out. No. But as he turned to grab his phone and keys, he heard the wardrobe doors creak open behind him. Marcus spun around. The doors were wide open, and standing in front of the wardrobe was a woman. She was young, maybe mid-20s, wearing a floral dress that looked straight out of the 1970s. Her hair was long and stringy, her feet bare. But it was her eyes that made Marcus take an involuntary step backward. They were completely white, as if the pupils and irises had been erased. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse and dry. "I've been waiting so long for someone to let me out." Who are you?" Marcus managed to stammer. "I used to live here," she said, taking a shuffling step forward. "In 1973. Mrs. Chen's mother was my landlord then. Such a nice lady. She said the wardrobe was special, that it connected to other places. I didn't believe her. I should have. What happened to you?" The woman tilted her head as if trying to remember. "I was curious. I went inside to explore. But the passage, it changes. I got lost. By the time I found my way back, years had passed. Decades. Everyone I knew was gone. And I had changed too." She held up her hands. Her fingernails were broken and bloody, worn down to quick from years of scratching. "But you're out now," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice calm. "You're free." The woman laughed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Free? Oh no, I can never leave. Not really. The wardrobe won't let me. It's hungry, you see. It needs someone inside. Always. That's crazy. You can leave." I'll help you. We can. There's only one way I can leave, she interrupted. Someone else has to take my place. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at the open wardrobe, then at the door to his apartment. Could he make it? The woman seemed to read his thoughts. You can run, she said. But you've opened the door. You've heard the calling. It will follow you now. Every closet, every cabinet, every dark space will whisper to you. You'll see passages where there shouldn't be any. You'll hear footsteps in the walls. And eventually you'll have to come back. They always come back. They? Oh yes, you're not the first to let me out. But the others, they couldn't handle what came next. The wardrobe always reclaims what belongs to it, one way or another. As if to emphasize her point, Marcus heard scratching sounds coming from inside his bathroom, then from the kitchen cabinets, then from under his bed. The entire apartment was alive with the sound of scratching, as if dozens of people were trapped in every small, dark space. Make it stop, he shouted. I can't, the woman said sadly. But you can. All you have to do is go inside, just for a little while. Explore the passages, see where they lead. Who knows? Maybe you'll be luckier than I was. Maybe you'll find your way back quickly. Marcus shook his head. No way. I'm leaving. He grabbed his keys and ran for the door. But when he yanked it open instead of the hallway, he found himself staring into another dark passage, identical to the one in the wardrobe. The scratching sounds grew louder, more insistent. He slammed the door and ran to the window. Outside, the city looked normal, cars passing by, people walking their dogs, life going on as usual. But when he tried to open the window, it wouldn't budge. None of them would. It's no use, the woman said. She had moved closer while his back was turned. The apartment is part of it now, part of the network. The only way out is through. Marcus's phone rang. Mrs. Chen's number appeared on the screen. He answered it with shaking hands. Mr. Marcus? Mrs. Chen's voice was tired, resigned. I'm sorry. I hope maybe this time would be different. But the wardrobe has chosen. It always chooses. You knew about this. Marcus shouted. You knew and you rented me the apartment anyway. I had no choice, Mrs. Chen said. My mother bound our family to it generations ago. We are its keepers. We must always provide tenants. If we don't, it will take us instead. This is insane. I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen repeated. Truly I am. But you must understand, the wardrobe is not evil. It's just hungry, and it gives as much as it takes. The passages lead to incredible places, Mr. Marcus. Worlds beyond imagination. Some who enter even choose to stay to explore forever. It's not a prison if you embrace it. I don't want to explore. I just want to leave. Then find someone else, Mrs. Chen said simply. That's what she did. That's what they all do eventually. Find someone curious enough to open the door, brave enough to step inside. Then you can take their place out here. It's the only way. The line went dead. Marcus turned back to the woman. She was standing by the wardrobe now, one hand resting on its frame. I was in there for 43 years, she said. 43 years of wandering through passages that led to nowhere and everywhere. I've seen things you wouldn't believe. Beautiful things. Terrible things. I've walked through the closets of kings and the cupboards of killers. I've hidden in the dark spaces between walls and listened to the secrets of the world. And now, Marcus asked, now I get to rest. For a while. Until the wardrobe calls again. It always calls again. She looked at him with those white, empty eyes. I'm sorry it had to be you. You seem nice. But someone has to feed it, and I'm so tired. The scratching sounds had become a roar. Every surface in the apartment seemed to be moving, pulsing, breathing. The wardrobe doors swung wider, and Marcus could see shapes moving in the darkness beyond, glimpses of other passages, other places, other trapped souls wandering endlessly through the spaces between. He had a choice to make. Run and be hunted forever, or step inside and hope to find his way back. Marcus thought of his old life, his job, his friends. All of it seemed very far away now. The woman was right. He could already feel the pull of the passages, the curiosity about what lay beyond. The wardrobe was patient. It could wait. It had all the time in the world. How do I know I won't get lost like you did? He asked. The woman smiled sadly. You don't. But here's a secret. Getting lost isn't the worst thing. The worst thing is finding your way back and realizing you no longer belong in the world you left behind. That's why we always return to the wardrobe eventually. It's the only place that still makes sense. Marcus took a deep breath. The scratching had stopped, replaced by expectant silence. Even the woman had gone quiet, waiting for his decision. He thought about running. He thought about fighting. He thought about calling the police, the media, anyone who might believe him. But deep down he knew the truth. The wardrobe had chosen him the moment he'd answered the apartment listing. Maybe even before. Maybe it had been calling to him his whole life, and he'd finally answered. With trembling legs, Marcus walked to the wardrobe. The darkness beyond seemed to breathe, welcoming him. "Any advice?" he asked the woman. "Don't trust the mirrors," she said. "And whatever you do, don't follow the cry. It never leads anywhere good." Marcus nodded. Then, before he could lose his nerve, he stepped into the wardrobe. The last thing he heard before the darkness swallowed him was the sound of the doors closing and the woman's whispered words. "I'll keep the apartment warm for you, for when you find your way back." They always find their way back. Then there was only darkness and the endless passages beyond. Night shift at the Memory Lane Motel. Denise had worked plenty of night shifts in her life, but there was something different about the Memory Lane Motel. Maybe it was the way the neon sign flickered, casting strange shadows across the empty parking lot. Maybe it was how the building seemed to hum with a low frequency just below the range of human hearing. Or maybe it was the way her predecessor Carl had quit without notice, leaving only a hastily scrawled note. "Can't do it anymore." They remember everything. The motel sat on a lonely stretch of highway, the kind of place that existed solely for travelers who'd driven too long and needed a bed, any bed for the night. It had 24 rooms arranged in a perfect U-shape around a courtyard with a long drained pool. The office was small and cramped, smelling of old coffee and something else Denise couldn't identify. Something sweet and cloying, like flowers left too long in a funeral home. Mr. Patel, the owner, had hired her over the phone without even asking for references. "Can you work nights?" he'd asked. "Yes." "Can you work alone?" "Yes." "Can you follow instructions exactly as written?" "Of course." "Then the job is yours. Start tomorrow. Midnight to 8 a.m. The instructions are in the office. Follow them exactly." "This is very important, Miss Denise." "Exactly as written." The pay was surprisingly good for a night clerk position, which should have been Denise's first warning. But she needed the money, and how hard could it be to manage a mostly empty motel for 8 hours? Her first night, she arrived to find the office empty except for a thick binder labeled "Night Shift Procedures" in faded red letters. She opened it to find pages of typed instructions, some so old the ink had faded to gray, others clearly added more recently. The first page contained a list of rules. 1. Check-ins after 2 a.m. must be registered in the blue ledger, never the computer. 2. Room 13 is permanently occupied. Do not disturb the guest. Do not look through the window. If the phone rings from room 13, do not answer. 3. If a guest asks for a wake-up call, write down the time but do not actually call them. 4. The ice machine turns off automatically at 3 a.m. If you hear it running after that time, unplug it immediately and do not investigate the sound. 5. If anyone asks about the pool, tell them it's closed for maintenance. Never mention when it might reopen. 6. Between 3:33 a.m. and 4:44 a.m., do not look directly at any of the room windows. Use peripheral vision only. 7. If you hear children laughing, do not investigate. There are no children registered at the motel. 8. The breakfast room is off limits during night shift. Keep the door locked and do not enter even if you hear sounds from inside. 9. If a woman in a wedding dress asks for room 7, tell her it's being renovated. Offer her room 19 instead. She will cry but will accept. 10. Complete the nightly counts exactly as instructed. Your safety depends on accurate records. Denise read through the rules 3 times, each reading making her more uneasy. What kind of motel was this? But the office was warm, the coffee maker worked, and the police station was just a phone call away if anything genuinely dangerous happened. She settled in behind the desk and prepared for what she assumed would be a boring but lucrative 8 hours. The first few hours passed quietly. A trucker checked in at 12:30, paying cash and barely making eye contact. A young couple arrived at 1:15, giggling and clearly drunk, practically running to their room. Normal, everyday motel business. Then 2 a.m. came, and with it, the first test of the strange rules. A man walked into the office, though walked wasn't quite the right word. He moved too smoothly, as if he were gliding just above the floor. He was dressed in a suit that looked expensive but outdated, like something from the 1950s. His face was pleasant but somehow wrong, as if someone had tried to draw a human face from memory and gotten the proportions slightly off. "Good evening," he said, his voice cultured but hollow. "I'd like a room for the night." Denise's hand moved automatically to the computer keyboard, then stopped. After 2 a.m. The blue ledger. She pulled out a leather-bound book from under the desk, its pages yellowed and filled with entries in various handwriting styles. "Of course, sir. May I have your name?" The man smiled, and Denise noticed his teeth were perfect, too perfect, like dentures or a doll's painted smile. "Johnson. Robert Johnson." She wrote the name carefully in the ledger, noting the date and time. As she did, she noticed something odd. There were multiple entries for Robert Johnson, spread across decades. Same name, same handwriting style in the signature, but dated 1967, 1978, 1989, 1995, 2003, 2011, and now 2024. "How many nights will you be staying?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just the one," Mr. Johnson replied. "I never stay longer than necessary." She assigned him room 22 and handed him an old-fashioned metal key. No key cards at the Memory Lane Motel, apparently. "Breakfast is," she began automatically, then caught herself. The breakfast room was off-limits. "The diner down the road opens at 6, she finished lamely. Mr. Johnson took the key, his fingers ice-cold when they briefly touched hers. "I won't be needing breakfast. I never eat in the morning." He glided out of the office, and Denise watched him make his way to room 22. He didn't walk like someone who'd been driving all night. He walked like someone who had all the time in the world. At 2:47 a.m., the phone rang. The caller ID showed room 13. Denise stared at the phone, letting it ring. Rule number 2 echoed in her mind. If the phone rings from room 13, do not answer. After 6 rings, it stopped. Then, almost immediately, it rang again. And again. And again. By the 5th round of calls, Denise's nerves were frayed. What harm could answering do? Maybe the guest needed help. Maybe they were having a medical emergency. Her hand hovered over the receiver. The phone rang and rang, the sound drilling into her skull. Just as she was about to give in an answer, she noticed something. The blinds of room 13 were moving as if someone were peeking through them. But the room was completely dark. She turned away, focusing on some paperwork, and eventually the phone stopped ringing. At exactly 3 a.m., she heard the ice machine shut off with a mechanical clunk. The sudden silence was oppressive. She made herself a fresh cup of coffee and tried to read the magazine someone had left on the desk, but the words kept swimming before her eyes. At 3:17 a.m., she heard it. The ice machine was running again. The sound was wrong, though. Instead of the normal humming and occasional clatter of ice dropping, it sounded wet, like something thick and viscous was being pushed through the machinery. Following the instructions, Denise grabbed the key to the utility room and made her way to the ice machine, carefully keeping her eyes averted as she passed the room windows. The machine was next to the defunct pool, housed in a small alcove. As she got closer, the sound grew louder and more disturbing. She rounded the corner and stopped dead. The ice machine was running, but it wasn't producing ice. A dark, thick liquid was pouring from the dispenser, pooling on the concrete. In the dim light, it looked black, but Denise had a sick feeling that in daylight, it would be a very different color. She lunged for the power cord and yanked it from the outlet. The machine shuddered to a stop, but the liquid continued to drip for several long seconds before finally ceasing. Denise backed away, her heart hammering. She should call the police. She should call Mr. Patel. She should leave. But something in the back of her mind, some instinct for self-preservation, told her that calling attention to this would be a very bad idea. She hurried back to the office, careful to keep her gaze down as she passed the rooms. It was 3:32 a.m. 1 minute until the window watching restriction began. As she settled back behind the desk, she heard it, children laughing. The sound seemed to come from the empty pool area, high-pitched giggles echoing off the concrete. She gripped the arms of her chair, forcing herself not to investigate. There were no children registered at the motel. Rule 7. At 3:33 a.m. exactly, something changed in the atmosphere. The air grew thick and heavy, like the moments before a thunderstorm. Denise kept her eyes firmly on the desk, using only her peripheral vision to monitor the parking lot. That's when she saw them. In every window, in every room, even the supposedly empty ones, there were figures. They stood perfectly still, all facing the office. She couldn't make out details using only her peripheral vision, but she could see their silhouettes. Some tall, some short, some seemed to be missing pieces, an arm here, a head there. The children's laughter grew louder, joined by other sounds. Whispers, moans, the sound of fingernails on glass. Denise focused on the ledger, reading through old entries to distract herself. The names blurred together, people checking in but, she noticed, rarely checking out. Where were all the departure times? A shadow fell across the desk. Someone was standing directly in front of the office window. Every instinct screamed at her to look up, to see who or what was there. But it was still the forbidden time, 4:17 a.m. according to the clock. 27 more minutes. The shadow didn't move, didn't shift, just stood there waiting. A drop of sweat rolled down Denise's temple. Her neck ached from the effort of not looking up. The whispers grew louder, and now she could almost make out words. Look at us. Remember us. We've been waiting. At 4:43 a.m., with just 1 minute to go, she heard the office door handle turn. Her heart stopped. She'd locked that door. She was sure of it. The handle turned again, more insistently. Then came a knock. Soft at first, then louder. Then pounding. The whole door frame shook. 50 seconds. 40. 30. The pounding stopped. Through her peripheral vision, she saw the shadow at the window was gone. 20 seconds. 10. 5. At exactly 4:44 a.m., Denise looked up. The parking lot was empty. Every room window was dark. It was as if the last hour and 11 minutes hadn't happened at all. Her hands shaking, she poured herself another cup of coffee, this one with a generous splash from the flask she kept in her purse. The rules hadn't mentioned anything about drinking on the job. At 5:15 a.m., she heard the bell above the office door chime. A woman walked in and Denise's blood ran cold. She was wearing a wedding dress. Once white, now yellowed with age and stained with what looked like mud. Or maybe it had been white recently but had aged decades and minutes. Her veil was torn, hanging loosely around a face that might have been beautiful once but was now gaunt and hollow-eyed. Mascara ran in black rivers down her cheeks. Room 7, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need room 7. He's waiting for me. Denise's throat was dry, but she managed to speak. I'm sorry, but room 7 is being renovated. Can I offer you room 19 instead? The woman's face crumpled. Fresh tears joined the old ones, and she let out a wail that made Denise's skin crawl. It was the sound of pure grief, of loss so deep it had carved hollows in reality itself. But he's waiting in room 7, the woman sobbed. He's been waiting for so long. It's my wedding night. I'm already so late. The accident? There was an accident. Room 19 is very nice, Denise said, trying to keep her voice gentle and steady. Just as nice as room 7. I'm sure he won't mind. The woman continued to cry for several long minutes. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the crying stopped. She looked at Denise with those hollow eyes and nodded. Room 19, she repeated dully. Yes, all right. Room 19. Denise handed her the key, noting that the woman's hand passed right through it on the first try before solidifying enough to grasp the metal. The bride drifted out of the office, her dress trailing behind her, leaving wet footprints that sparkled with broken glass. Denise watched her go to room 19, open the door, and disappear inside. A moment later, she heard crying again, muffled by walls and distance. The rest of the night passed in relative quiet. A few normal guests checked out early, leaving their keys in the drop box. Denise noticed they all looked tired, haggard, as if they'd gotten no sleep at all. One man muttered something about the voices in the walls as he passed the office. At 2:47 a.m., the phone rang. The caller ID showed room 13. Denise stared at the phone, letting it ring. Rule number 2 echoed in her mind. If the phone rings from room 13, do not answer. After 6 rings, it stopped. Then, almost immediately, it rang again. And again. And again. By the 5th round of calls, Denise's nerves were frayed. What harm could answering do? Maybe the guest needed help. Maybe they were having a medical emergency. Her hand hovered over the receiver. The phone rang and rang, the sound drilling into her skull. Just as she was about to give in an answer, she noticed something. The blinds of room 13 were moving as if someone were peeking through them. But the room was completely dark. She turned away, focusing on some paperwork, and eventually the phone stopped ringing. At exactly 3 a.m., she heard the ice machine shut off with a mechanical clunk. The sudden silence was oppressive. She made herself a fresh cup of coffee and tried to read the magazine someone had left on the desk, but the words kept swimming before her eyes. At 3:17 a.m., she heard it. The ice machine was running again. The sound was wrong, though. Instead of the normal humming and occasional clatter of ice dropping, it sounded wet, like something thick and viscous was being pushed through the machinery. Following the instructions, Denise grabbed the key to the utility room and made her way to the ice machine, carefully keeping her eyes averted as she passed the room windows. The machine was next to the defunct pool, housed in a small alcove. As she got closer, the sound grew louder and more disturbing. She rounded the corner and stopped dead. The ice machine was running, but it wasn't producing ice. A dark, thick liquid was pouring from the dispenser, pooling on the concrete. In the dim light, it looked black, but Denise had a sick feeling that in daylight, it would be a very different color. She lunged for the power cord and yanked it from the outlet. The machine shuddered to a stop, but the liquid continued to drip for several long seconds before finally ceasing. Denise backed away, her heart hammering. She should call the police. She should call Mr. Patel. She should leave. But something in the back of her mind, some instinct for self-preservation, told her that calling attention to this would be a very bad idea. She hurried back to the office, careful to keep her gaze down as she passed the rooms. It was 3:32 a.m. 1 minute until the window watching restriction began. As she settled back behind the desk, she heard it, children laughing. The sound seemed to come from the empty pool area, high-pitched giggles echoing off the concrete. She gripped the arms of her chair, forcing herself not to investigate. There were no children registered at the motel. Rule 7. At 3:33 a.m. exactly, something changed in the atmosphere. The air grew thick and heavy, like the moments before a thunderstorm. Denise kept her eyes firmly on the desk, using only her peripheral vision to monitor the parking lot. That's when she saw them. In every window, in every room, even the supposedly empty ones, there were figures. They stood perfectly still, all facing the office. She couldn't make out details using only her peripheral vision, but she could see their silhouettes. Some tall, some short, some seemed to be missing pieces, an arm here, a head there. The children's laughter grew louder, joined by other sounds. Whispers, moans, the sound of fingernails on glass. Denise focused on the ledger, reading through old entries to distract herself. The names blurred together, people checking in, but she noticed rarely checking out. Where were all the departure times? A shadow fell across the desk. Someone was standing directly in front of the office window. Every instinct screamed at her to look up, to see who or what was there. But it was still the forbidden time, 4:17 a.m. according to the clock. 27 more minutes. The shadow didn't move, didn't shift, just stood there waiting. A drop of sweat rolled down Denise's temple. Her neck ached from the effort of not looking up. The whispers grew louder, and now she could almost make out words. Look at us. Remember us. We've been waiting. At 4:43 a.m., with just 1 minute to go, she heard the office door handle turn. Her heart stopped. She'd locked that door. She was sure of it. The handle turned again, more insistently. Then came a knock. Soft at first, then louder. Then pounding. The whole door frame shook. 50 seconds. 40. 30. The pounding stopped. Through her peripheral vision, she saw the shadow at the window was gone. 20 seconds. 10. 5. At exactly 4:44 a.m., Denise looked up. The parking lot was empty. Every room window was dark. It was as if the last hour and 11 minutes hadn't happened at all. Her hands shaking, she poured herself another cup of coffee, this one with a generous splash from the flask she kept in her purse. The rules hadn't mentioned anything about drinking on the job. At 5:15 a.m., she heard the bell above the office door chime. A woman walked in and Denise's blood ran cold. She was wearing a wedding dress. Once white, now yellowed with age and stained with what looked like mud. Or maybe it had been white recently but had aged decades and minutes. Her veil was torn, hanging loosely around a face that might have been beautiful once but was now gaunt and hollow-eyed. Mascara ran in black rivers down her cheeks. Room 7, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need room 7. He's waiting for me. Denise's throat was dry, but she managed to speak. I'm sorry, but room 7 is being renovated. Can I offer you room 19 instead? The woman's face crumpled. Fresh tears joined the old ones, and she let out a wail that made Denise's skin crawl. It was the sound of pure grief, of loss so deep it had carved hollows in reality itself. But he's waiting in room 7, the woman sobbed. He's been waiting for so long. It's my wedding night. I'm already so late. The accident, there was an accident. Room 19 is very nice, Denise said, trying to keep her voice gentle and steady. Just as nice as room 7. I'm sure he won't mind. The woman continued to cry for several long minutes. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the crying stopped. She looked at Denise with those hollow eyes and nodded. Room 19, she repeated dully. Yes, all right. Room 19. Denise handed her the key, noting that the woman's hand passed right through it on the first try before solidifying enough to grasp the metal. The bride drifted out of the office, her dress trailing behind her, leaving wet footprints that sparkled with broken glass. Denise watched her go to room 19, open the door, and disappear inside. A moment later, she heard crying again, muffled by walls and distance. The rest of the night passed in relative quiet. A few normal guests checked out early, leaving their keys in the drop box. Denise noticed they all looked tired, haggard, as if they'd gotten no sleep at all. One man muttered something about the voices in the walls as he passed the office. At 7:45 a.m., Denise began the closing procedures. The last item on the list was complete nightly counts. She found the appropriate form and began filling it out. Living guests, 12 non-living guests, ___ permanent residents. 1 room 13, manifestations, ___ incidents requiring cleanup, ___ reality breaches, ___ She stared at the form. How was she supposed to know how many non-living guests there were? Or manifestations? She'd seen plenty, but had they all been guests? In the margin of the form, someone had written in pencil, "When in doubt, undercount." They don't like to be numbered. Denise filled in conservative numbers, signed the form, and filed it in the appropriate drawer. As she did, she noticed hundreds of similar forms going back decades. The numbers varied wildly, some nights showing 0 unusual activity, others showing dozens of incidents requiring cleanup. At exactly 8 a.m., the day manager, a cheerful middle-aged woman named Patricia, arrived. "How was your night, dear?" Patricia asked, already starting the coffee maker for the day shift. "It was..." Denise struggled for words. "Unusual." Patricia laughed. "They always are here. But you did well, you're still here and reasonably sane looking." Carl only lasted 3 nights before he started talking about the memories in the walls and the guests who check out but never leave. "What is this place?" Denise asked. "Really?" Patricia's smile faltered slightly. "It's a motel, dear. Just a motel that happens to sit on what you might call a thin spot. Reality is a bit flexible here. The past and present get mixed up sometimes. The dead don't always realize they're dead. And sometimes what? Sometimes the motel itself remembers things. Events, tragedies, moments of high emotion. They replay like echoes. That's why we have the rules. They keep the echoes from becoming something more solid. Something dangerous. The woman in the wedding dress. Ah, you met Lily. Poor thing. Car accident on her wedding night in 1962. She and her new husband were driving here for their honeymoon. He was in room 7 when he died. She's been trying to reunite with him ever since, but room 7, well, that's where the motel's memory is strongest. If she ever actually makes it inside, we might have a problem. And room 13? Patricia's expression darkened. We don't talk about room 13. Just be grateful the guest there is quiet. Usually. Denise gathered her things, exhausted and overwhelmed. As she headed for the door, Patricia called after her. "Will we see you tonight?" Denise paused. The job was insane. The motel was clearly some kind of supernatural hotspot. She should run and never look back. But the pay was good. Very good. And there was something else, something she couldn't quite name. A fascination, perhaps. A need to understand what this place really was. "Yes," she heard herself say. "I'll be back." Patricia smiled knowingly. They always come back. The memory lane has a way of holding on to people. Just remember the rules, dear. They're there for a reason. As Denise walked to her car, she glanced back at the motel. In the daylight, it looked shabby and unremarkable. But she could feel it watching her, remembering her, adding her to its collection of nights and days and moments. She thought about the ledger, about all those names. All those people who had checked in. She wondered how many had truly checked out and how many were still here, caught in the motel's memories, replaying their last moments over and over. Her second night was worse. This time, she knew what to expect, which somehow made it more terrifying. She arrived to find a note from Patricia. Room 3 had an incident. Cleaned up the visible mess, but the walls might whisper tonight. Just ignore them. The first few hours passed much like the night before. A few regular travelers, exhausted and wanting nothing more than a bed. Denise checked them in efficiently, careful to use the computer for everyone who arrived before 2 a.m. At 1:47 a.m., a family of 4 walked in. Parents and 2 children, a boy and girl who couldn't have been older than 8 and 10. They all wore clothes from the 1970s, and they all had the same glazed, empty look in their eyes. "We need a room," the father said, his voice monotone. "The kids are tired. We've been driving for so long." Denise's hand hesitated over the keyboard. It wasn't 2 a.m. yet, but something about this family screamed that they belonged in the blue ledger, not the computer system. Of course, she said carefully. How long have you been driving? The mother answered, her voice dreamy and distant. Forever. Feels like forever. We can never quite reach where we're going. The little girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. I'm cold, Mommy. I've been cold for so long. Denise made a decision. She pulled out the blue ledger, rules be damned. As she wrote their names, the Hendersons, she noticed entries for them going back to 1974. Same names, same signatures over and over. She assigned them rooms 15 and 16, adjoining rooms with a connecting door. The family took their keys and drifted out, the children's feet not quite touching the ground. At exactly 2 a.m. Mr. Johnson returned. Same suit, same gliding walk, same too perfect smile. Good evening, he said. I'd like a room for the night. Mr. Johnson, Denise said, trying to keep her voice level. You checked in last night. His smile never wavered. Did I? How forgetful of me. Well, I'll need a room for tonight as well. She assigned him the same room, 22, and he took the key without comment. As he left, she called out, Mr. Johnson? What brings you to the memory lane? He paused at the door, not turning around. I'm looking for someone. I've been looking for a very long time. One night I'll find them. Until then, I keep checking in. He glided out, leaving Denise with more questions than answers. The night continued its parade of strange guests and stranger occurrences. The ice machine activated at 3:07 a.m., and this time when Denise unplugged it, the liquid was clearer but smelled like copper and fear. The children laughed from 3:15 to 3:32, their giggles sometimes morphing into screams before shifting back to laughter. During the forbidden window time, Denise kept her eyes down, but she could feel them watching. This time, she heard them too, fingernails tapping on glass in rhythm, as if they were trying to communicate in some kind of code. Room 3's walls did indeed whisper. Even from the office, Denise could hear the soft susurrus of voices, words in a language she didn't recognize but somehow understood meant pain and regret and please make it stop. At 4:44 a.m., when she finally looked up, she saw something that made her grab the desk for support. In every window stood the same figure, Mr. Johnson. Dozens of him, all in the same suit, all with the same perfect smile. They stood perfectly still for a moment, then simultaneously turned and walked back into their rooms. The woman in the wedding dress came at 5:15 again, exactly like the night before. Same words, same tears, same eventual acceptance of room 19. Denise wondered if the woman remembered the previous night or if, for her, it was always the first time. At 6 a.m. something new happened. The phone rang from the breakfast room. There was no phone in the breakfast room. Denise had checked during a quiet moment the night before. The room was set up with round tables and chairs, a small buffet area, and faded posters advertising continental breakfast. No phone. But it rang anyway, muffled but insistent. She stood at the locked door, key in hand, debating. The rules said not to enter. But they said nothing about a phone that shouldn't exist. The ringing stopped. Then started again. Stopped. Started. Finally, unable to stand it anymore, Denise unlocked the door and stepped inside. The breakfast room was wrong. The tables were set with plates and cups, steam rising from fresh coffee and food that smelled delicious. But the food was wrong too. The eggs were too white, the toast too perfect, the fruit too bright. It looked like a child's play set of breakfast, plastic and artificial. The phone sat on the buffet, an old rotary model like something from the 1950s. It was ringing. Against every instinct, Denise answered it. Room service, a cheerful voice said. Breakfast is served. Won't you join us? Denise looked around the room. It was no longer empty. Every table was full of guests, all eating their plastic perfect breakfast. They moved mechanically, lifting forks to mouths that never quite seemed to chew or swallow. No thank you, Denise managed to say. But you must be hungry, the voice continued. You've been working all night. Just one bite. One sip of coffee. We've been waiting for you to join us. The guests all turned to look at her in perfect unison. Their eyes were empty like dolls' eyes, but their mouths smiled. Join us, they said in unison. Join us for breakfast. Stay for eternity. Denise slammed the phone down and ran from the room, locking the door behind her. She could hear them in there, still eating, forks scraping against plates in an endless loop. When Patricia arrived at 8 a.m., Denise was ready with questions. The breakfast room, she said immediately. What's the deal with the breakfast room? Patricia's face went pale. You didn't go in there, did you? The phone was ringing. There's no phone in the breakfast room. There was this morning. Patricia grabbed Denise's shoulders, looking her directly in the eyes. Listen to me very carefully. Did you eat anything? Drink anything? Even a sip of water? No, nothing. I just answered the phone and left. Patricia relaxed slightly. Good. That room? There was an incident in 1987. Food poisoning. 17 guests died during the complimentary breakfast. The motel management covered it up, but the motel remembers. Sometimes it tries to complete the set. Complete the set? 17 died. It always wants 18. One more to make it feel finished. If you'd eaten anything, even a crumb? She shuddered. Just follow the rules, Denise. Please. They're written in blood and tragedy. Denise's third night was when things began to unravel. She arrived to find the parking lot fuller than usual. A tour bus had broken down nearby, and the passengers, a senior citizens group on their way to a casino, had walked to the motel seeking shelter. We can accommodate them, Patricia said, looking worried. But with this many living guests, the others might become agitated. Be extra careful tonight. Denise checked in the seniors, a process that took nearly an hour. They were a cheerful group despite their circumstances, chatting about their grandchildren and the slots they hoped to play. Normal, living, breathing people who had no idea what kind of place they'd stumbled into. By the time she finished, it was 1:58 a.m. She barely had time to put away the regular registration system before the clock struck 2 o'clock. Mr. Johnson arrived at 2 o'clock exactly, as if he'd been waiting for the moment. Good evening, he said. I'd like room 22, Denise interrupted, already writing in the ledger. I know. His smile widened, showing too many teeth. You're learning. That's good. Maybe you'll last longer than the others. Others? Night clerks. They come and go. But the good ones, the ones who really understand this place, they stay. One way or another. He took his key and glided away. As he reached the door, he turned back. By the way, you might want to prop the office door open tonight. With this many living guests, the pressure builds up. Things need a way to escape. Denise didn't like the sound of that, but she wedged the door open with a stopper. Almost immediately, she felt the difference. A lessening of pressure she hadn't even realized was there. The Henderson family checked in again at 2:17, same clothes, same empty eyes. This time the little boy spoke. Have you seen our dog? He asked. We can't find Rusty. He was in the car with us, but then. I haven't seen a dog, Denise said gently. He was in the car, the boy insisted. When the truck hit us, but now he's gone. The family drifted to their rooms, leaving Denise with a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. At 2:45, she heard barking. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, the sound of a dog in distress. It continued for exactly 13 minutes, then cut off abruptly. The ice machine activated at 3 a.m. as usual, but this time Denise didn't go to unplug it immediately. She was distracted by what she saw in the parking lot. The senior citizens were all standing outside their rooms. All of them. In their night clothes, barefoot, standing perfectly still and staring at the office. No, not at the office. At something behind the office. Denise turned slowly, not wanting to see but unable to stop herself. Room 13's door was open. The door that was never supposed to open, the room that was permanently occupied, the guest who was never to be disturbed. That door stood wide open, revealing only darkness within. But it wasn't empty darkness. Something moved in there, something large and wrong and hungry. The seniors began walking toward it, their movements jerky like marionettes. Their eyes were open but unseeing, and they walked in perfect synchronization. No! Denise shouted, running outside. Stop. Go back to your rooms. They didn't hear her. Or couldn't hear her. They continued their march toward room 13. Denise grabbed the nearest senior, a woman in a pink nightgown, trying to shake her awake. The woman's skin was cold, her eyes rolled back showing only whites. Help me, a voice said from room 13. Not spoke. The voice appeared directly in Denise's mind. They're mine now, but you could save them. Just come closer. Let me explain. Every instinct screamed at Denise to run. Instead, she planted herself between the seniors and the open door. No, she said firmly. They're guests here. Living guests. You can't have them. Can't I? The voice mused. Check your rules, little night clerk. Check them carefully. With shaking hands, Denise pulled out her phone and photographed the rules page she'd memorized. But when she looked at the photo, the rules had changed. Where it once said, "Do not disturb the guest," it now read, "Do not disturb the guest unless invited." You open the door, Denise said, realization dawning. You invited yourself. Clever girl. Yes, the rules bind me as much as they bind you. But rules can be interpreted. And with this many living souls so close, I grew strong enough to interpret them my way. The seniors were almost to the door now. Denise could see into room 13 more clearly. It wasn't a room at all, it was a mouth, a throat, a passage to somewhere else, somewhere hungry and patient and old. What do you want? Denise asked desperately. What I've always wanted. To feed, to grow, to break free of this prison of rules and regulations. These old souls will give me strength. And then I'll take the young ones, the families, the travelers. Everyone who's ever slept under this roof has left a piece of themselves behind. I'll collect them all. Denise thought frantically. The rules. There had to be something in the rules. Then she remembered. Your safety depends on accurate records. The nightly counts, she shouted. I haven't done the nightly counts. She ran back to the office, grabbing the forms. Quickly, she began writing. Living guests, 47 non-living guests, 12 permanent residents, 0 manifestations, 1 active breach, reality breaches, 1 room 13. As she wrote, she heard the voice roar in frustration. The seniors stopped walking, swaying in place like wheat in a wind. You can't count me as 0, the voice snarled. I'm here. I've always been here. Not anymore, Denise said, writing firmly. According to the official count, room 13 is empty. No permanent resident. You don't exist. That's not how it works, isn't it? The rules bind you. The counts are part of the rules. And the count says you're not here. The darkness in room 13 began to writhe and twist. The seniors shook their heads as if waking from a dream, looking confused and frightened. Go back to your rooms, Denise told them gently. Lock your doors. Don't come out until morning. They scattered like frightened birds, doors slamming shut behind them. The voice from room 13 grew fainter but more venomous. This isn't over. You've won tonight, but I'm still here. I'll always be here. And one night you'll make a mistake. One night you'll forget a rule or miscount a number. And when you do, the door to room 13 slammed shut with enough force to shake the entire motel. The number on the door flickered and faded, leaving just a blank space where 13 used to be. Denise stood in the parking lot, shaking with adrenaline and fear. She'd won. Somehow, impossibly, she'd won. The rest of the night passed in relative quiet. The usual strange guests came and went. The ice machine activated, she unplugged it. The children laughed, she ignored them. The forbidden window time came and went, she kept her eyes down. The woman in the wedding dress appeared, she went to room 19. But something had changed. The motel felt different. Lighter maybe. As if a weight that had been pressing down on it for decades had finally lifted. When Patricia arrived at 8 a.m., she took one look at Denise and gasped. Your hair, she said. Denise reached up and felt her hair. Several strands came away in her hand, white as snow. She was 25 years old, but the hair was that of someone much, much older. Room 13, she said simply. Patricia's face went through several expressions, shock, fear, then something like respect. It's gone, Denise continued. The door, the number, the thing inside. I wrote it out of existence. That's impossible. Room 13 has been here since the motel was built. It's part of the foundation, part of the... Patricia stopped, her eyes widening. The counts? You used the nightly counts. Denise nodded, exhausted beyond measure. Patricia sat down heavily. In 40 years of working here, through dozens of night clerks, no one ever thought of that. Or maybe they did, but didn't survive to try it. She looked at Denise with something approaching awe. You might actually make it here. Make it. The memory lane doesn't just collect guests, Denise. It collects staff too. The good ones, the ones who understand its nature, who can work with its rules instead of against them. We become part of it. Part of its memory. Is that what happened to you? Patricia smiled sadly. Check the employee records sometime. Patricia Williams, hired 1983. Died 1987. Food poisoning incident in the breakfast room. I was serving that day. Denise stared at her. In the morning light, she could see it now. The slight translucence to Patricia's skin, the way shadows fell through her instead of on her. But you seem so... normal? Real? I am real. Just not alive. The motel needed a day manager who understood its nature. So I stayed. It's not a bad existence. I help the living, comfort the dead, maintain the balance. It's meaningful work. And the night clerks? Some run screaming. Some disappear. We don't talk about those. Some, like Carl, last a few days before breaking. And very rarely we get someone like you. Someone who can see the motel for what it is and work with it instead of against it. Denise gathered her things slowly. Will I become like you? Not if you don't want to. The motel doesn't take anyone unwillingly. Well, except for the guests who break the rules, but that's different. For staff, it's always a choice. I need to think about this. Of course, take your time. But Denise, you'll be back tonight. They always come back, the ones who truly see. As Denise drove home, she thought about the Memory Lane Motel. About its strange guests and stranger rules. About the thin spot between worlds where past and present blurred together. About Patricia, dead for decades but still showing up for her shift. She thought about her own life. Small apartment, no family, few friends. A life lived in the margins, unremarkable and unmemorable. At the Memory Lane, she mattered. Her actions had consequences. She had saved 47 lives tonight. She had banished something ancient and hungry. She had made a difference. That night she returned. And the next night. And the next. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. She learned the motel's rhythms, its moods, its needs. She discovered that room 7 could be opened on the anniversary of the wedding crash, allowing Lily to visit her husband's ghost. She found that Mr. Johnson was looking for his daughter, who disappeared at a motel in 1953. Not this one, but the motel remembered anyway. She learned that the ice machine bled on nights when someone was about to die on the highway, a warning system that had saved lives when heated. The children's laughter came from a birthday party in 1968 that had ended in tragedy, but playing recordings of Happy Birthday at exactly 3:15 would quiet them. The motel revealed its secrets slowly, trusting her with its mysteries. And Denise found herself growing attached to it, to its strange residents and stranger rules. One night, 6 months after she'd started, Patricia asked her the question, "Have you decided? Will you stay?" Denise looked around the office, at the blue ledger full of names, at the rules that had become second nature, at the windows that sometimes showed other times and places. "Not yet," she said, "but ask me again in a year." Patricia smiled. The motel is patient. It has all the time in the world. Outside, the neon sign flickered, casting its ever-changing shadows. Cars passed on the highway, most driving by without a second glance. But sometimes, when someone was lost or tired or running from something, they would see the sign and pull in. And Denise would be there ready to check them in, to guide them through the night, to keep the balance between the living and the dead, between memory and reality, between what was and what is. The Memory Lane Motel remembered everything. And now it remembered her too. The collector. Some people collect stamps. Others collect coins or baseball cards or vintage toys. Howard Finch collected something different. He collected last words. Not famous last words. Those were already well documented, preserved in history books and quoted in movies. No, Howard collected the last words of ordinary people. The forgotten ones. The ones who died alone, whose final utterances dissipated into empty rooms and unhearing walls. His collection began accidentally 30 years ago when he was working as a night janitor at St. Mary's Hospital. He'd been mopping the third-floor hallway when he heard a voice from room 312, an elderly man talking to no one, his family having left hours earlier. "The birds," the man had said, his voice paper-thin but clear. "Tell them the birds know the way home." Howard had peered into the room, but the man's eyes were already closing. The heart monitor's steady beep stretched into a long, flat tone. By the time the nurses arrived, the man was gone, and Howard was the only one who'd heard his final words. He'd written them down in his notebook. He always kept one for his cleaning schedules. Not knowing why, just feeling that someone should remember. That was the beginning. Over the years, Howard developed a sense for it. He could tell when someone was close to the end, could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing against the thin barrier between life and death. He changed jobs frequently, janitor, orderly, night security, always positions that gave him access to the dying but kept him invisible, unnoticed. His collection grew, leather-bound journals filled with last words, each entry meticulously dated and annotated. He recorded everything, the words, the time, the circumstances, even the quality of light in the room. "The tea is getting cold," whispered a housewife in suburban Dallas. "I can see the equations now," muttered a failed mathematician in a Boston boarding house. "Don't let them paint the fence blue," insisted a farmer in rural Montana. Most people would have found it morbid, but Howard saw it as a sacred duty. These words were the final echoes of human consciousness, the last desperate attempt to leave a mark on the world. Without him, they would be lost forever. His apartment reflected his obsession. Journals lined every wall, organized by date and location. He developed his own cataloging system, cross-referencing by theme, by emotion, by what he called the weight of ending. Some last words were heavy with meaning, others light as air. Howard was careful never to interfere, never to prompt or suggest. He was merely a recorder, a witness. He had rules. 1. Never speak to the dying unless spoken to first. 2. Never share the words with the families, they had their own memories. 3. Never judge the words no matter how strange or mundane. 4. Always record exactly without interpretation or editing. 5. Never use the words for personal gain. For 30 years, he'd followed these rules without exception, until the night he met Eleanor Vance. It was a Tuesday in November, cold and wet, the kind of night that kept most visitors away from Riverside Nursing Home. Howard was there as a fill-in night orderly, covering for someone's sick leave. He'd already collected 3 sets of last words that week and was feeling the familiar weight of them, the responsibility of being the sole keeper of someone's final thoughts. Eleanor Vance was in room 444, a corner suite that she'd occupied for 7 years. The staff said she'd been a linguistics professor, spoke 13 languages, had written books about the evolution of human speech. Now, at 93, she rarely spoke at all. Howard was checking on her as part of his rounds when he heard her breathing change, that particular rhythm that meant the end was near. He sat quietly in the visitor's chair, notebook ready, pen in hand. Eleanor's eyes opened, focusing on him with surprising clarity. "You're the collector," she said. Howard froze. In 30 years, no one had ever acknowledged what he did. I don't know what you mean," he said carefully. Eleanor smiled, a paper-thin expression that barely disturbed the wrinkles on her face. "Don't lie to a dying woman, Mr. Finch. Yes, I know your name. I've known about you for years. The nurses talk, you see. The collector who comes in the night, who writes down the words nobody else hears." Howard's hand trembled slightly. "How do you—" "I've been waiting for you," Eleanor interrupted. "I have something important to tell you. About the words. About what they really are. I don't understand. Last words aren't just words, Mr. Finch. They're doorways. Each one opens a path between this world and somewhere else. And you, with your collection, you've been gathering keys." Howard wanted to leave, to dismiss this as the ramblings of a dying mind. But something in Eleanor's eyes held him in place. A terrible clarity, a knowing that went beyond mere words. "Every person who dies," Eleanor continued, her voice growing stronger, "leaves a door open for just a moment. Their last words are the key to that door. Most of the time, the door closes naturally, the words fade, and the passage seals. But when someone collects them, writes them down, preserves them, the doors stay open just a crack." "That's not possible," Howard whispered. "Isn't it? Tell me, Mr. Finch, have you ever noticed strange things happening around your journals? Cold spots? Whispers? The feeling of being watched?" Howard's blood ran cold. He had noticed those things. For years. His apartment was always cold, no matter how high he turned the heat. Sometimes, late at night, he heard whispers in languages he didn't recognize. And yes, always the feeling of invisible eyes upon him. "They're trying to come back," Eleanor said. "The ones whose words you've collected. They're using the doors you've kept open, trying to claw their way back to the world of the living. And with each word you collect, each door you prop open, they grow stronger." "No," Howard said, but even as he denied it, he thought of the shadows in his apartment that moved when there was no light to cast them, the journals that sometimes fell open to specific pages, the words that sometimes seemed to rearrange themselves when he wasn't looking. "I've spent my life studying language," Eleanor said. "I learned that words have power beyond their meaning. Last words most of all. They're spoken at the boundary between life and death, charged with the energy of transition. You've been collecting that energy, Mr. Finch, building a battery of souls." "I was trying to preserve them," Howard said weakly. "To honor them. Intent doesn't matter. Only consequence." Eleanor's breathing was becoming labored. "But there's still time. You can undo what you've done. Burn the journals. All of them. Release the words back into the void where they belong." "I can't. They're all I have. My life's work." "Your life's work is about to destroy more lives than you can imagine." Eleanor gripped his hand with surprising strength. "When enough doors are open, when enough souls are pressing against the barrier, it will break. The dead will flood back. Not as ghosts, not as spirits, but as something else. Something hungry and wrong." "When?" Howard asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Soon. Very soon. I can feel them gathering. Can't you?" and Howard could. Now that Eleanor had pointed it out, he could feel the pressure building like the air before a storm. 30 years of collected words, thousands of doors held open by his careful documentation. "There's something else," Eleanor said, her voice fading. "The first words you collected. The man in room 312. The birds know the way home. Do you remember?" "Of course. He was my husband." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't there when he died. I'd gone home to rest and he died alone. Except for you." Howard's notebook fell from nerveless fingers. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Don't apologize. You gave me a gift. You see, I've spent 7 years in this place, searching for the man who heard my husband's last words. I knew if I found you I could warn you. I could stop what's coming." "But how did you know?" "Because he told me. My husband. He's been visiting me, speaking through the crack in the door you left open. He's one of the few who don't want to come back, who just want to communicate. But the others are different." Eleanor's breathing was shallow now, quick little gasps. Howard knew the sound. She was close. "Please," she whispered. Burn them all. Don't let my last words be another door. Let me go properly. Let us all go." "I will," Howard promised, though the thought of destroying his collection made him feel hollow. "I'll burn them." Eleanor smiled. Good. "And Mr. Finch?" "My last words." Howard picked up his notebook, pen poised. "No," Eleanor said. "Don't write them. Just remember them. Let them fade naturally as words should." She took one more breath, then spoke her final words. "The doors are closing now." And she was gone. Howard sat with her body for a long moment, fighting the urge to write down what she'd said. His fingers itched for the pen, his mind automatically cataloging the words, filing them away. But he'd made a promise. He left the nursing home at dawn, driving straight to his apartment. In the morning light, the place looked different. Darker, despite the sun streaming through the windows. The shadows were too thick, too solid. His journals lined the walls, hundreds of them, thousands of last words carefully preserved. As he stood there, he heard them. Whispers, just as Eleanor had said. Not in English, not in any language he recognized, but he understood them anyway. "Let us in. Open the door wider. We want to come home." Howard grabbed the first journal, dated 30 years ago. The man in room 312, Eleanor's husband. He opened it to the first entry and read the words he'd written so carefully. "The birds know the way home." As he read, the temperature dropped. Frost formed on the windows. And in the corner of his vision, Howard saw something. A shape, barely there, like smoke given form. He saw more shapes gathering, pressing against the walls of reality. Thousands of them, one for each set of last words he'd collected. They were waiting, patient as only the dead could be. Howard carried the first journal to his fireplace. His hands shook as he struck a match. The flame seemed so small against the weight of 30 years, against the responsibility he'd taken on without understanding. "I'm sorry," he said to the gathering shadows. "I didn't know." He touched the flame to the pages. The paper caught immediately, burning with a strange, cold fire that gave no heat. As the words turned to ash, Howard heard something, a sigh, like release, like relief. One by one, he fed the journals to the flames. Each one burned differently. Some went up in seconds, the words eager to be free. Others resisted, the pages refusing to catch until Howard held the flame directly to the ink. As he burned them, he remembered the woman who'd said only purple before dying, and how her room had smelled of lavender. The child who'd whispered, "The monster isn't under the bed anymore," smiling as she went. The soldier who'd recited his serial number one last time, finding comfort in the routine. Each memory was precious, each loss a small death of its own. But Eleanor had been right. The doors needed to close. Halfway through the collection, things began to change. The shadows pulled back, the whispers grew fainter. The apartment warmed degree by degree. But Howard also felt a terrible emptiness growing inside him. Without his collection, without his purpose, who was he? He was burning the journal from 2018 when he found an entry that made him stop. "The collector will burn us all, but one must remain. The last door stays open always." Howard didn't remember collecting these words. The handwriting was his, the date and location properly recorded, but he had no memory of the dying woman who'd spoken them. He flipped through the remaining journals, finding more entries he didn't recognize. All warning him, all telling him the same thing. One door must remain open. Always. By evening, Howard had burned all but one journal. The most recent one only half filled. He sat on his couch, holding it, feeling the weight of the words inside. The apartment was warm now, the shadows normal. The whispers had stopped. But something felt wrong, unfinished. His phone rang. The nursing home. Mr. Finch? This is Dr. Patterson. I'm calling about Mrs. Vance. We can't seem to find any record of her being a patient here. Room 444 has been empty for months. Are you sure you have the right facility? Howard hung up without answering. He opened the final journal to today's date. There, in his own handwriting, were Eleanor's last words, the ones he hadn't written down. The doors are closing now. But below that, in handwriting that shifted and changed even as he watched, new words appeared. A collector must always exist. The doors must be watched. Some must stay open, controlled, contained. You cannot burn them all. You are the keeper of the threshold. Howard understood then. Eleanor hadn't been warning him to destroy his collection. She'd been preparing him to understand its true purpose. The last words weren't just doors for the dead to return through, they were safety valves, preventing pressure from building up in the barrier between worlds. By collecting them, by controlling which doors stayed open and which remained closed, he'd been performing a vital service. And now, by burning most of them, he'd reset the system. But it couldn't be completely closed. It never could be. Someone had to keep watch. Someone had to collect the words that mattered, the ones that would otherwise tear holes in reality. Howard opened a fresh notebook. He had work to do. But now he understood the real rules. 1. Collect only the words that call to you. 2. Burn the old journals when they grow too heavy with souls. 3. Keep the balance between the living and the dead. 4. Never let the collection grow too large. 5. When your time comes, ensure another takes your place. Howard returned to the nursing home that night, explaining away the confusion about Eleanor as a miscommunication. He walked the halls, listening, waiting. In room 312, the same room where it had all began, an old woman was dying. Howard sat with her, notebook ready. The birds, she whispered, her last breath forming the words. They still know the way home. Howard wrote it down, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility. But now he also felt something else, purpose, understanding. He was not just a collector. He was a guardian, standing watch at the threshold between worlds. And somewhere, in the space between her words and his pen, Eleanor Vance smiled. The collection would continue. It had to. But now Howard knew why. The final call. Every town has its legends. In Millbrook, population 8,000, the legend was about the payphone on the corner of Ash and Main. It had been there since 1963, a relic everyone expected to be removed but never was. The phone company claimed it wasn't theirs. The city said it wasn't on their property maps. It simply existed like it had grown from the concrete itself. Most people ignored it, walked past without a second glance. After all, who used payphones anymore? But David Chin noticed things others didn't. It was part of what made him a good investigative journalist, even if he was currently stuck writing fluff pieces for the Millbrook Gazette. He noticed that the phone was always clean despite years of weathering. He noticed that the coin slot had been welded shut. And he noticed that sometimes late at night it rang. He'd first heard it 3 months ago while walking home from the office. A single ring at exactly 11:17 p.m., echoing off the empty storefronts. He'd stopped, waited for it to ring again, but it remained silent. Since then, he'd made a point of being near the phone at 11:17 whenever possible. Sometimes it rang, sometimes it didn't. There was no pattern he could discern. David had tried answering it once. The receiver had been cold enough to burn his ear, and all he'd heard was static that sounded almost like breathing. He'd hung up quickly, unsettled by the experience. But David was nothing if not persistent. He started researching the phone's history, spending hours in the library's archives and the newspaper's morgue. What he found made him even more curious. The phone had been installed in 1963, that much was true. But the records about why and by whom were contradictory. Some documents said it was part of a citywide modernization project. Others claimed it was a private installation paid for by someone named Margaret Ashford. Margaret Ashford, David discovered, had been a telephone operator for Bell System from 1943 to 1962. She died by suicide on November 17, 1962, exactly 1 year before the phone was installed. The newspaper article about her death was brief but puzzling. She'd been found in her apartment, having ingested a massive dose of sleeping pills. The strange part was that she'd been discovered with telephone receivers pressed to both ears, the cords wrapped around her arms. The phones weren't connected to anything. Her suicide note consisted of just one line, "They won't stop calling." David dug deeper. In the months before her death, Margaret had filed multiple complaints with the phone company about strange calls coming through the switchboard. Calls with no originating number, voices speaking in languages that didn't exist, sometimes just breathing or crying or sounds she couldn't describe. Her supervisors had dismissed her concerns, suggesting she was overworked. But David found the testimony of another operator, Rose Hutchins, who'd worked alongside Margaret. She wasn't crazy. I heard them too, those calls. They came through late at night, always for her specifically. Whoever was calling would ask for Margaret by name. But the voices, they weren't right. They sounded like they were coming from very far away or from underwater or from, I don't know how to describe it, from somewhere else. Rose had quit the phone company shortly after Margaret's death and moved out of state. David tracked her down to a nursing home in Florida and called her. "I don't talk about that," Rose said immediately when he mentioned Margaret's name. "That was a long time ago." "Please," David pressed. "I'm trying to understand what happened. There's a payphone here that might be connected to her death." There was a long silence. Then Rose sighed. Margaret was sensitive. She could hear things others couldn't. The telephone system, all those wires and connections, they pick up more than just voices sometimes. They pick up echoes, fragments, things that get lost in the spaces between. What kind of things? The call started coming about 6 months before she died. Always late at night, always specifically for her. She said the callers knew things, personal things, secret things. They would tell her about conversations she'd had years ago, word for word. They would describe her childhood home, her dead father's voice, her fears. Who were they? That's just it, they weren't anyone. They were everyone. Every call that had ever been made, every voice that had ever traveled through those wires, all talking at once. The system had developed a kind of memory and Margaret could access it. Or it could access her. That sounds crazy? Yes, but I heard them too near the end. They started calling for me as well. That's why I quit. That's why I left town. Rose's voice dropped. The payphone you mentioned, when was it installed? November 17, 1963. A year to the day after Margaret died. Rose made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. She always said she'd find a way to warn people. To create a buffer between the network and anyone else who might be sensitive. A single point of contact that could handle the pressure. You think she somehow arranged for the phone to be installed after her death? I don't think anything. I know she had money saved and I know she had a will with very specific instructions. Whether those instructions included a payphone, well, you'd have to ask her lawyer. If he's still alive. The lawyer, it turned out, had been dead for 15 years. But his son still had the firm's old files in storage. After some persuasion and a small research fee, David was allowed to examine Margaret Ashford's file. The will was straightforward except for one provision, a trust fund to maintain in perpetuity a public telephone at the corner of Ash and Main Streets, Millbrook. The trust was to pay for installation, maintenance, and any necessary repairs. There was a sealed envelope attached with instructions that it be opened only if the phone was ever in danger of being removed. David persuaded the lawyer's son to open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper in Margaret's handwriting. This phone is a necessary evil. It collects the calls that should not be answered, the voices that should not be heard. It is a lightning rod for the strange frequencies that sometimes bleed through the wires. Without it, these calls will find other paths, other victims. The phone must remain. The calls must have somewhere to go. And sometimes someone must answer to keep the pressure from building too much. But never more than once a month. Never for more than 30 seconds. And never, ever give them your real name. David sat back, processing this information. A sacrificial phone, designed to attract and contain supernatural or anomalous calls. It sounded insane. But he'd heard the static that sounded like breathing. He'd felt the burning cold of the receiver. That night, he stood at the corner of Ash and Main at 11:16 p.m., waiting. The street was empty, the shops dark. The payphone stood in its usual spot, its chrome surface reflecting the streetlight. At 11:17 exactly, it rang. David let it ring 3 times, then picked up the receiver. Hello. The static was there, but underneath it, he could hear something else. Voices. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all talking at once. The conversation of every person who'd ever used a phone in Millbrook, all compressed into a single, overwhelming stream. He heard his own voice among them, every phone call he'd ever made. His first nervous call to a girl in high school. His tearful conversation with his mother when his father died. His interview for the journalism job. All of it, preserved in some impossible memory bank, playing back simultaneously. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. the cacophony of voices suddenly synchronized, speaking as one. We are the accumulated conversations of the connected world. We are the words spoken into the wire, the secrets whispered across distances, the last breaths transmitted through circuits. We are what remains when the call ends but the connection persists. What do you want? To be heard, to be remembered, to continue the conversation that never truly ends. Margaret understood. She gave us this focal point, this single terminus. Without it, we would seek other outlets, other listeners. David thought of Margaret, dying with phones pressed to her ears, unable to escape the voices. How many others have there been? How many listeners? Some hear us without trying. They are the sensitive ones, the ones attuned to frequencies beyond the normal range. Margaret was one. Rose nearly became another. And now, you. I'm not sensitive. I can barely hear you through the static. Not yet. But each time you answer, the connection grows stronger. Each conversation opens your mind a little wider. Soon you'll hear us everywhere, in every dial tone, every busy signal, every moment of silence on the line. David's hand tightened on the receiver. That's what happened to Margaret. She heard you everywhere. She tried to contain us. This phone was her solution. But we are growing, expanding with every call made, every voice added to the collective. Soon, this single point will not be enough. Then what? Then we will need more listeners, more terminals, more connections. The unified voice began to fracture, individual voices bleeding through. David heard children laughing, women crying, men arguing, all in languages he didn't recognize. Among them, clearer than the rest, a woman's voice. David? David Chin. He nearly dropped the phone. Who is this? It's Margaret. I'm part of them now, part of the collective. I tried to warn people, tried to create a barrier, but I became part of what I was trying to contain. Margaret? How is this possible? Everything spoken into a phone becomes part of the network, including last words, including mine. I spoke into dead receivers as I died, trying to sever the connection. Instead, I joined it permanently. The static was growing louder, the voices more insistent. David's ear was going numb from the cold. What should I do? He asked. Keep the phone active. Answer when you must, but not too often. Find others who can share the burden. And whatever you do, don't let them remove the phone. It's the only thing keeping the voices focused here instead of spreading through every phone in town. But you said it won't be enough soon. Then we'll need more phones, more buffers, more people willing to listen. Margaret's voice was fading, being pulled back into the collective. I'm sorry, David. I'm sorry you found this. But someone has to know. Someone has to maintain the barrier. The line went dead. David hung up the receiver and stepped back from the phone. His ear burned with cold, and he could still hear echoes of the voices, faint but persistent. Over the following weeks, he threw himself into research. He found patterns, cities around the world with similar phones, similar stories, places where the telecommunications infrastructure had developed its own kind of consciousness, where the act of communication had left permanent echoes. He wrote an article about it, framing it as urban legend, as fiction. But he included enough real details that those who needed to know would understand. The article went viral, shared by people who recognized the truth hidden in the fiction. Emails started coming in. People who'd heard the voices. People who'd found similar phones in their towns. People who understood the need for buffers, for lightning rods, for someone to listen to the calls that shouldn't exist. David became the unofficial coordinator of what they half-jokingly called the Telephone Preservation Society. They shared information, techniques, warnings. They mapped the phones that served as collection points and worked to ensure they remained functional. And once a month, David returned to the phone on Ashen, Maine. He would answer when it rang, listen to the voices for exactly 30 seconds, then hang up. Each time, the collective grew larger, the voices more numerous. Each time, he heard Margaret among them, no longer warning but welcoming, as if she'd accepted her role as part of the eternal conversation. One night, 6 months after his first real conversation with the voices, David arrived to find someone else at the phone. A young woman, college-aged, with her hand on the receiver. Don't, he said. She turned and he saw she'd been crying. It keeps calling me, even when I'm not here. I hear it in my dreams. You're sensitive, David said, understanding. You can hear them without the phone. She nodded. My grandmother could too. She told me about this place, about what the phone really is. She said if I answered, maybe they'd leave me alone. They won't. They'll only get louder. Then what do I do? David thought of Margaret, of Rose, of all the sensitive ones who'd been driven to desperation by voices they couldn't escape. Then he thought of the Telephone Preservation Society, of the network of people working to maintain the barriers. You learn to live with it, he said, and you help others do the same. The voices are part of our world now, part of what we've created with our need to connect across distances. We can't silence them, but we can contain them, channel them, keep them from overwhelming those who hear them most clearly. The phone rang. David checked his watch. 11:17 p.m., right on schedule. He looked at the young woman. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah Kim. I'm David, and this is your initiation into the world's strangest support group. He gestured to the phone. Answer it. Listen for 30 seconds, no more. And whatever they tell you, remember, you're not alone. There are others like us, others who hear and listen and keep the balance. Sarah picked up the receiver with trembling hands. David watched her face change as she heard the voices. First terror, then wonder, then a kind of grim understanding. When she hung up after exactly 30 seconds, she looked different. Older maybe, or just aware of a weight she'd carry forever. They know everything, she said. Every word ever spoken into a phone. Every secret, every lie, every goodbye. Yes, David said. And now you're part of the system that keeps them contained. Welcome to the Telephone Preservation Society. They walked away from the phone together, leaving it standing in its pool of streetlight. Behind them, the chrome surface gleamed, waiting for the next call, the next voice to add to its endless collection. In the distance, David could hear other phones ringing, in phone booths in abandoned buildings in places where the old infrastructure still stood. Each one a collection point, each one maintained by someone who understood the necessity of listening to voices that shouldn't exist. The conversation continued as it always had, as it always would. And somewhere in the electronic noise, Margaret Ashford's voice whispered its eternal warning. They won't stop calling. But now, at least, someone was always there to answer. The connection. 5 strangers sat in a circle in the basement of Millbrook Public Library. They'd never met before, but they shared something that brought them together. They'd all survived encounters with things that shouldn't exist. Sarah Kim, who heard the voices in the telephone wires. Marcus Webb, who'd spent 3 months trapped in passages between wardrobes before finding his way back. Denise Palmer, former night clerk at the Memory Lane Motel. Howard Finch, collector and guardian of last words. And Daniel Morrison, who'd once answered his grandmother's disconnected rotary phone at 3:33 a.m. I'll start, Sarah said. She was the newest to the group, still adjusting to her role in the Telephone Preservation Society. The voices are getting stronger. Not just in Millbrook, everywhere. David Chin says there are reports from Tokyo, London, Mumbai. The old phone lines are all activating. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The passages are expanding too. I've been tracking reports of people disappearing into closets, cupboards, even desk drawers. The wardrobe wants to spread its network. Same with the motel, Denise added. She looked tired, older than her years. We're getting reports of similar establishments worldwide. Places where time is thin, where the past won't stay dead. The memory lane isn't unique anymore. Howard was writing in one of his journals, as always. The last words are changing. Used to be, people died with simple statements, calling for loved ones, expressing regret. Now they're speaking coordinates, phone numbers, addresses. Like they're being given directions to somewhere. Daniel, who'd been quiet until now, finally spoke. My grandmother's phone gave me a message last week. First time in months. It said, the collectors are gathering. The time of separation is ending. The 5 of them sat in silence, processing this information. They'd each thought their experiences were isolated incidents, unique hauntings or anomalies. But over the past year, they'd begun to realize the truth. They were all parts of a larger pattern. It started with communication, Howard said thoughtfully. Phones, voices, the human need to connect across distance and even death. But it's evolved beyond that. The motel preserves memories, Denise said. The wardrobes create passages. The phones collect voices. The last words open doors. And the rotary phone. She looked at Daniel. Receives messages from the other side. He finished. My grandmother was a medium. The phone was her tool. Now it's mine. Sarah pulled out a map, unfolding it on the table. It was covered in red dots, hundreds of them, scattered across the globe. These are all the confirmed incidents from the last 6 months. Phones that won't stop ringing. Wardrobes that lead somewhere else. Motels where the past lives on. People collecting final words. And here, She pointed to a cluster of dots in various cities, reports of old rotary phones activating in homes where they've been disconnected for decades. The pattern was clear. The dots weren't random. They formed lines, connections, a vast network spreading across the world. It's infrastructure, Marcus said suddenly. We built the physical networks, telephone lines, roads, buildings, but something else built a network on top of ours, or through ours, using our connections to create its own. For what purpose? Daniel asked. Howard stopped writing and looked up. I think I know. The last words I've been collecting. There's been a recurring theme. People talking about going home, or the way back, or the return. What if whatever's on the other side isn't trying to invade our world? Then what? Denise asked. What if it's trying to build a bridge? A permanent connection between here and there? Not to invade, but to reunite. The room fell silent again as they considered this. Each of them had touched the other side in some way. Each had felt the desperate hunger of things trying to return, to reconnect, to be remembered. The woman in the wedding dress, Denise said softly. She just wanted to be with her husband. The guests at the motel, they're all trying to finish something they left undone. The voices in the phones, Sarah added, they want to be heard, to continue conversations that were cut short. The passages in the wardrobes, Marcus said, they connect places that have been separated, bringing together what was split apart. Daniel nodded slowly. My grandmother always said death was just another form of distance, that the dead weren't gone, just elsewhere, trying to call home. So what do we do? Sarah asked. Do we help them? Fight them? Try to maintain the barriers? Howard closed his journal. Maybe we're thinking about this wrong. We've been treating these things as invasions, as hauntings, as problems to be contained. But what if they're symptoms of something larger? What if reality itself is trying to heal some fundamental separation? Between life and death, Denise said. Between here and there, Marcus added. Between then and now, Daniel continued. Between speaker and listener, Sarah finished. They sat with this revelation, each lost in their own thoughts. They'd come together thinking they were fighting against something, holding back some supernatural threat. But maybe they weren't fighters at all. Maybe they were midwives, helping deliver a new kind of reality where the boundaries weren't so rigid, where death wasn't quite so final, where distance could be overcome by more than just technology. We need to share what we know, Howard said finally. Not just with each other, but with everyone who's experienced these things. Create a network of our own. To do what? Denise asked. To be ready, Daniel said. Whatever's coming, whatever's being born from all these connections, we need to be ready to help guide it. To make sure it happens safely. Sarah pulled out her phone, a modern smartphone, not one of the haunted payphones. I'll contact David Chin. He's got connections with similar groups worldwide. If we're right, if this is happening everywhere, we need to coordinate. As she made the call, the others began planning. They would document everything, share protocols, create guidelines for safely interacting with the various phenomena. They would turn their individual experiences into collective knowledge. Outside, in the gathering dusk, the payphone on Ash and Main began to ring. Across town, the Memory Lane Motel's neon sign flickered to life. In Marcus's old apartment, the wardrobe doors creaked open. In Howard's study, phantom pens wrote final words in empty journals. And in Daniel's grandmother's house, the rotary phone spun its dial without any hand to guide it. The connections were strengthening. The network was growing. And somewhere between the living and the dead, between memory and reality, between here and there, something new was preparing to be born. The 5 collectors, for that's what they all were, collectors of different aspects of the same phenomenon, worked through the night. By dawn, they'd created the framework for what would become known as the Threshold Protocol, a guide for those who found themselves standing at the boundaries between worlds. As they prepared to leave, to return to their individual posts, Daniel's phone, his regular phone, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for keeping the doors open. We're almost ready to come home. They shared a look, 5 strangers who'd become something more. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The living and the dead, the past and the present, the here and the there, all of it was converging. And at the center of it all, 5 ordinary people who'd answered when the extraordinary called. The connections were complete. The reunion was about to begin.